Recording in progress.
I love it. We already have more B-reel material than we did last time.
When it showed up, my wife's like, I don't think my husband knew how big it was. Are you going to leave that in?
No. But it feels fun to say it anyway.
I was like, damn, somebody amped it up to Thai spicy today.
At our Triple P spring ping, really.
Spring ping.
Is it?
I kind of like spring ping.
I'm not going to say spring ping. Just so we're clear.
I provide the non-American culture.
So you provide culture.
Jensen, you know that the Sherman I'm working on is called Lancashire, right?
Say it again.
Lancashire.
Okay.
I see a twitch.
That's bait.
Cool. I'll say it the right way. Lancashire.
Lancashire.
I said that. Lancashire. That's the name of the tank. That's right on the side.
Anyway. It not even started yet.
Friendly at gmail.com.
John chose violence with hot sauce.
Just got to set the record straight. I mean, spring ping.
Is anybody ever, good grief, guys.
I was hoping you'd kick it to somebody, but I'll come back in and do that for you.
Sorry, Scott. You can edit that out.
Or not.
Spring ping.
You're welcome for my service.
Welcome to episode 83 of the Plastic Posse. Everybody's here today, which is the first time in a long time. I want to welcome Scott, Doug, Jensen, JB, TJ, and the rest of you guys listening. All right, let's go around the room and see what everybody's up to. First, we're going to head all the way over to England to see what Jensen's up to. How you man doing, my friend?
I've been doing all right. I've been quiet. I have to sometimes post a bit of modeling in the group chat to prove that actually I'm still alive. But I finished the AK facade group build. That was really fun. I would have posted pictures a few days ago when I actually finished it, but I just cannot for the life of me find the charger for my camera. It's a really generic plug as well. It's just a 2-pin plug. But as soon as I get that found, I'll post the pictures all over FaceSake and all that stuff. But yeah, really enjoyed that. Like a few of the guys did, I cut a bit of foam with hot wire cutter for a pavement sort of thing on the front. I did some pigeons because we know how original they are, and a little 1940s French civilian from Mini Art. Like it's quite an old molding, but it comes with resin heads, so it's a bit of an improvement. But yeah, got that finished. Really, really enjoyed that because there's literally no building whatsoever. It's literally get it out of the box, get painting, weathering, do all that fun stuff. Yeah, really, really enjoyed that. I want to do more of them, and I really want AK to release more of these facades.
You're here.
Yes,
absolutely. I can just see they'll sell really well. The first two they released were great, and there's no shortage of ideas they can come up with. But yeah, just been doing that. I've also, every day I walk into the other room and I look at the pile of kits I've got and I'm just thinking, which one do I do? And every day I walk out thinking, okay, that was a waste. I've still not decided. So still just trying to like toss a few ideas around to what actual plastic model to build next. I'll let you know when I decide.
That's great. Your facade looks great, and I'm with you 100%. They need to release some more. They can just do the facades themselves now without the paints and everything. I think would be good, just separately. So, all right, let's move over to the Commonwealth of Virginia and see how TJ's doing.
Oh, I'm not doing too bad. I've been pretty busy at the bench, which has been nice. I guess it was last weekend was Thanksgiving, if I got my days correct. It was a long weekend. I was out of town most of that weekend. But our friends over at the Model Insanity podcast did what they called the turkey shoot. So it was build a kit over 4 days. I missed 2 of those days. So when I got back Friday night, I got out Tacom Whippet, which is one of my favorite kits. It was the first tank that I ever built. And I slammed that thing together between, I guess, Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon. Of course, I cheated a little bit because I didn't put the machine guns in it. So that cleaning up those machine guns takes a little bit of work. I didn't add them for that reason, and also because I'm doing it as a captured White Russian tank that was captured by the Red Army during the Russian Civil War. And a lot of the pictures I've seen of the tanks that the Red Army captured, they have all the guns stripped out of them. I don't know why, but you just kind of see that. So I was like, I can justify it that way. So yeah, I got it painted, and then I didn't finish. I just got it built over the weekend, and I primed it and painted it green, which it looks okay. I kind of set it aside and went back to poking around on my Sherman 3. I got that progressing nicely. I painted all the track armor on the tank today, or last night, and finished it today. And the other thing I got out is the Hummel that our friend Zach gave me 3 years ago. Like, and he had built it when he was like 19.
Wow. And
that's like when we first got to know each other, and he asked me if I would be interested in painting it, and I was like, yeah, sure. Just want to make a kid feel good. I was like, yeah, sure, buddy. Because he's like, oh, I suck at painting, which of course he does not suck at painting. But yeah, so we worked out a collaboration or whatever. So he had built it and he sent it to me, and it's just kind of been sitting, literally collecting dust for 3 years. And I wasn't really in a painting mood to work on the Sherman. I guess that was Thursday night, so I went and got it out and kind of got it cleaned up a little bit. I got to do a little bit of repair work on it, just because it's been shipped, it's been moved around my studio or whatever, my area. Some pieces have fallen off. Nothing major. It's like a couple little pieces of photo etch, and something else came off too. The part of the superstructure, which is really, really thin, it's held together just by a little glue joint, and he put a weld on it. That broke too. Just it's split, so I got to reinforce it with some super glue, and then I'll resculpt the weld on it, which is really maybe a half an inch worth of weld. It's just a little bit, and then it'll be ready to get into primer, and I'll get that painted up. Yeah, it's not my forte, but I'm doing it in a captured Russian markings from a pretty cool picture I found of a couple of them that they had captured. I'm assuming some point 1945, because there's an M4A2 76 in the background, and those weren't built until like late 1944. So they probably would not have been into Russian hands until early 45. So the picture I have doesn't have a date, but just based on what's in the background, that's what I'm going to assume it was. But yeah, right. That's what I got going on.
All right, let's move over to Colorado. And JB, what's been up with you?
Thanks, Grant. About the same. I participated in the turkey shoot hosted by the Modeling Insanity podcast. So special thanks to Rob, Justin, and Steve over there. They popped into our Zoom session. And I think next year, we attempted the 72 and 72 this year. We had great participation, but I think next year it's full support for the Modeling Insanity's turkey shoot. What they do is really fun, and they hosted it over those 4 days during Thanksgiving, from the morning of Thursday all the way into the evening of Sunday. So they're a great group of folks, lots of laughs. They popped into our Zoom sessions, and it was a lot of fun. So for that, I built Tamiya's old SDKF 250-9. I converted it to a 253. And when I say convert, I don't even like using that word because I added a couple strips of styrene. And then I painted it my patented Panzer Blue. So there were some people that maybe don't get the joke, and that's fine. I paint my Panzer Gray blue. But it was a little cool. It was a little fun kit. Really enjoyed it. Kind of surprised me how fast it went together, and then how fast I got it through the painting process. But that was one project. In addition to that, I finished both facades completely. They are framed in those 5x7 shadow boxes. I added some bicycles that were printed, little ceramic cobblestone street section, and then polished it off with some pigeons as well on the bookstore. So got those 3 things done. And then I also just finished last night. I'll probably tweak it this morning a little bit. The 72nd scale Bismarck B turret. This little guy was a lot of fun. I think I built it in a day or 2 and then painted it in 3 or 4. So highly recommend those TACOM kits. They're great. They're a great distraction, I guess you could say, to quickly build something and finish it. It was a lot of fun. I've taken a lot of pictures. I'll share them on Patreon, because I did a little SBS for it, just kind of going through those different steps. But I did mine really rusty. I don't know if the Bismarck was ever rusty, but I've seen a lot of boat pictures of rusty boats, because if they're out at the sea, that is the most corrosive environment on Earth. So I rusted it up with some oil paint. So that was a lot of fun. Again, highly recommended. And then in addition to that, I will note, because we were talking before we started recording, if you have one of those turrets, if you go on eBay, there's a company out of China that does laser cut decking, and then also aluminum barrels, super cheap. I paid $10. I got decking and 2 barrels for this. Just shared the Missouri barrels with Doug, $20 for 3 turned aluminum barrels that are pretty massive. They'll save you a lot of time. I mean, to be honest, if you buy those barrels, you could probably build this, I should say, in probably 2 or 3 hours, super fast. The only thing that I didn't like about mine is on the Bismarck turret, it has these little turnbuckles for the canvas covers. If I had to do it over again, I would have drilled holes to insert them and glue them. They're just kind of glued to the top and they're extremely fragile. Or you could even leave them off, because I've seen pictures online of models where they didn't even include them. And to be honest, you wouldn't even know unless someone told you. So that's a fun little project. I'm going to go out to the store today and find a base for it. It's 5x5 and then call that done. And then dare I say, I have 29 days to finish the Secret Santa from last year, which is the Sergeant York. So it is the last project I hope to complete this year. I have it behind me. I'll be starting it this weekend. We're not starting it back up this weekend with the hopes of finishing it by the 1st of January.
Wow. The Sergeant York in 30 days. That's a big kit. You and TJ have both been phenomenally building it. Seeing the pictures of both your guys' works has been great. Really good. All right, let's head up to Utah with Doug. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. I, too, participated in the turkey shoot from the Modeling Insanity guys. I chose a Tamiya 48 scale F4U1D Corsair, which I did finish in time. It was a lot of fun. I've built the kit before. It had some hiccups, like I had forgotten when I built it 20 years ago, that if you put the wings on down and locked, ready to fly, there are some fit issues. They just don't seem to want to go together right. And so I had to kind of bust open the wing and remove those parts and put the wing fold pieces in so that I could fold the wings and make it look a little bit better. It was a lot of fun. I had to mix my blue. I didn't have it. I didn't have the navy blue on my shelf. So I found a recipe online and it came out pretty good. I enjoyed all of that. And the funny thing is, during that time on Thanksgiving Day, my wife was upstairs with our daughter, and my wife said she was feeling really sorry for me because I was downstairs all alone.
Aww.
I was working on a model and I was having a great day. Thanksgiving was great. Anyway, I attempted a 72nd scale kit for the 72 and 72 also, but that one was kind of a mistake. I still look at that thing and I just can't believe the trumpeter. I mean, it's trumpeter, of course. We don't expect great things necessarily. But I mean, when you've got a 72nd scale tank, it's an elephant, big tank, but 49 pieces for the tracks. Each track has 49 pieces on it. And then the running gear itself is not well designed. It's not made for, it's like they just took a 35th scale and just downscaled it, just downsized it. It's not made for the scale.
They did. Yeah.
It's not made for that scale. It's not good for. So anyway, other than that, once we finished the Corsair, I just wanted to keep building. So I started another Bandai TIE Fighter because, I'm always happy building Star Wars.
All right, Scott, the master of disaster. What have you been up to?
Well, I also finished my facade and got it inside the frame. That was a fantastic project. Loved it. I'm just going to back what Jensen said. I hope we get several more of those from AK moving forward. I'm going to probably get the other one, the one with the bricks and the windows and everything, because it just had a great time. So did that and, participated in some of the online sessions as well with everybody. That's pretty cool what TJ's doing with Zach. I had forgotten about that. It'll be cool to see a collaboration. And as you guys know, I went to Colorado a couple weeks ago and left my 1/16 scale Panzer I with JB, and pretty excited to see kind of where that goes. So maybe we ought to think about doing like a collaboration build where we all send a model to somebody else to paint. That's kind of a cool thing. So anyway, then been doing some podcast and giving Andy all my money for things that I didn't know that I needed to have. And got a big box from him. So that was great. And then I helped spend some of Doug's money. I sent him a link on one of the, cyber black, whatever I found on Amazon. They were selling like the 1/12 scale Boba Fett for what, Doug, like $12 or something?
Yeah, I bought 2.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So anyway, I think I linked him into some TIE fighters the week before that. So yeah, it's been probably spending too much time shopping on there, but Anyway, yeah, and then of course we spoke with Martin and Spud, and you guys will hear that later in this episode. That was a lot of fun to have that conversation. And Martin's latest video that's dropped, I think I've watched that like 4 times. I think it's one. As much as I love his videos, I think that latest video might be, if not his best, it's certainly, I think, one of his top 3. I don't know if you guys remember, but way back in the attic of the Plastic Posse, we had a Spitfire group build, a Mark I group build. And I actually broke out my Tamiya Spitfire kit, and I've been building that. And I'm to where I'm going to need to start painting. The wings are together, the cockpit's finished, and man, that newer tooled Tamiya Spitfire Mark I, it might be the best model kit I've ever built as far as the engineering and the design. It's just amazing. Really, really great. So,
well, we'll end up with me. I did finish my facade. I kind of went a little different. I went with a zombie kind of theme for mine. So I got it all, used the Royal Models, one of their zombie figures. Found a whole bunch of zombie posters from 28 Days and stuff like that from ETA, which is out of Italy. It's a company that does posters and stuff like that, all different scales. So I got those. They look really good. Got it based up, and it's done. I'll just reiterate what everybody else has said. It was a blast. I had a great time. So much fun. And I want to do more now. That's the thing. I want to get the other one. But I got the glass one first, so I want to go to the French one like John did with the bikes and stuff like that. That was really cool. I might throw some pigeons on mine, but I couldn't find any zombie pigeons, so I was
pigeons. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah. Besides that, I have done some Warhammer vehicles. A Spartan, which is a big Horus Heresy version of one of their land crawlers. Finished that, did a conversion of a guard recovery vehicle. I combined 2 kits together for that. Haven't painted either one of those yet. I did spend way too much money at Andy's sale, like some other people. Got a couple turrets, got a couple of vehicles. So I'm going to be busy for a while with those. So that's been fun. But other than that, I wasn't able to make the 72 and 72 right after Thanksgiving, though the wife wanted to put all the Christmas stuff up, and it looks like a glitter bomb exploded downstairs. So we have glitter everywhere, and I was afraid to bring it up into the hobby room for a while. So I've got my little cleaning going on up here, so I don't have glitter on a model figure or something like that. But other than that, it's been really fun. I've been busy at work, and so that's about it. So now that we're all done with that, done with talking about what we're doing, let's go into our first discussion, if you guys don't mind. So this comes to us from Scott Wadyko, and he asked the posse, what do you want to do to improve in 2024? I looked through some of the answers of some of the people online that already replied to this, and I kind of said, I said to everybody, this is, this could be anything. It could be, anything in your skill sets, your building techniques, your time building. Could be spending less or more money, cleaning up your stash, finishing self cleans, or anything like that. So I'm going to go first. What do I want to improve on in 2024? I want to build more armor. I haven't built armor in quite a while. I like 148 scale. I really like Tamiya's and AFB Club's 148 scale. Hobby Boss now has a 148 scale Panther A early that just came out. So I want to build that. That's what I want to do. I want to improve my 148 scale armor building. I really do enjoy doing that. And then I want to find more time. That's my biggest thing right now is I need to find more time to build. And I've got to force myself to either get up a little bit more early in the morning or work a little bit later at night on my stuff. I'm spending about 30 minutes a day mostly working on stuff. I want to jump that to an hour. So that's going to be my big thing I want to work on in 2024. And the last thing is I'm going to go to different shows. I'm not going to go to all the shows that we used to, go to. I want to try. Never been to AMPS Nationals. I'm going to go this year or in 2024. I want to go see that. Never been to Wonderfest. I'm going to go to Wonderfest in 2024. I'm really trying to, I want to, dare I say, spread my wings a little bit, but I want to try these different shows. I've heard such great things about them. I want to go to Telford next year. I really do. I want to see these. I want to see Spud's models up close. I want to see the work from England and Europe up close. I haven't been able to do that like some of the guys here have. And I feel that that's something I need to work on. So with that, what do you think, Scott? What do you want to improve?
I think for me, doing the facade, getting out of my comfort zone and actually using a paintbrush, I want to do more of that. I mean, I'm not going to say I want to paint a figure. I want to be realistic. It'd be nice to paint a figure. Grant and I had sent him a video of Duncan has this new figure that he painted. It's a horse, and I don't know what it's called. It's in Warhammer 40K. It's the army that has all the pus and pustules. It's like the demon vacuum cleaner that TJ built.
Yeah, it's actually an Age of Sigmar, but you're in the same area. It's like a Nurgle figure. So yeah,
a Nurgle. Yeah. My apologies to all the Warhammer builders out there. It's just really, really great. I'd love to be able to paint something like that. So yeah, just work on painting acrylics and maybe doing some more oil work with paint brushes. So that's what I'd like to do.
Sounds great. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that figure. They also make a figure, same Age of Sigmar, that is a normal guy on a horse too. So there's an opportunity for duel there.
Yeah, we'll have to talk.
Yeah, we should do something. Doug, sorry, how you doing? What do you want to do for 2024?
I want to enjoy this a little more.
Yeah,
and what I mean is, I worry so many times. I look at what I do, and I think I do pretty dang good work. But I look at what other people are doing, and I'm not even talking about the Spuds of the world. I'm talking about most, all of you guys and others that share with us. And I just think I can't do what they're doing. And it stresses me out, and it sometimes takes some of the joy from the hobby. And I think I just don't want to worry about it. I want to improve where I can improve, but not stress over the fact that I can't do a 3-tone camo on a German tank like JB can. I don't want to worry about that. I want to have fun doing it, which is one of the reasons I always go back to Star Wars. I also would love to make it to other shows too. That would be a good thing for me. But in the meantime, or if anybody knows about any shows where I can also go walking out in the woods and look for snakes, that would be great.
All right, JB, what about you?
For me, it's a bunch of things. In 2024, more time at the bench, as you mentioned. I think I've cracked that nut here in the month of November.
Yeah.
But it's just continuing to have fun and continuing to build unique projects. I look at what I've built over the years, and I'm like, man, nothing really stands out. I'd love to create pieces that evoke, dare I say, some emotion or inspiration, and storytelling is always a big one for me, or lack thereof in my models. So definitely looking to achieve that. So it's if I had to pick one thing, I want to build a diorama, a good one for that matter. One that tells a story, one that's memorable, one that pushes my techniques to new bounds, and one dare I say, that inspires people. So that's 2024. I have a good idea for the one I want to do, and I think I just need to start executing on it. So yeah, good question. It's always one of those good end of year questions, and looking forward into the next.
Yeah, that was awesome that Scott asked that, and we pinned it. At the end of the year, we all get kind of reflective, I think, but I thought it was really, really a good post.
Definitely. There's some really good answers. And if you haven't seen it yet, you need to scroll down and check out some of the answers from all the guys. It's really good. All right, TJ, up to you.
So I know the way he phrases the question is something you wanted to try to improve on, and I couldn't really think of anything I wanted to improve. Besides everything, I want to get better at everything that I do. But the one thing that I want to do that I have not ever done is I want to do a knocked out tank. I've never done a knocked out tank. I've never done knocked out anything really, and I feel like that's one of those things. Like, I know when I went to SMC, all the ones that I really, really liked. Not all of them, but a lot of them were like derelicts or knocked out tanks, like Pete Usher's, whatever that weird Russian SPG thing that he did. Like, that was a knocked out SPG. And, Chris Meddings did some knocked out like BMPs and T-72s and other stuff on his big diorama. And, I like knocked out vehicles. I think they're cool. And I've never done one. And I've had one in my mind that I've always wanted to do because I've never seen anyone do it. Now, someone might have done it before. I don't know. I've just never seen it, but it's Honky Tonk. It was a First Armored Division Sherman that was knocked out at Kasserine, Tunisia. Yeah, so I'm fairly certain that was due to demolition charges after the battle, because I know that after the battle, the Germans went through and put demolition charges on pretty much all the vehicles to render them irrecoverable, which is, I don't know if a lot of people know that about armored vehicles, but like they typically don't get blown up in one shot, especially in like World War II. Like they would continually shoot until it was burnt out and dead, if they could. And then, we did the same thing, the Americans and the Allies, and then afterwards we would go. A lot of the pictures you've probably seen of like knocked out German tanks in Europe most of them are in that state after the Allies took that area and then further disabled them so they could not be recaptured, or if they were taken, that they were worthless. But yeah, it's a pretty famous picture. It's in 4A1 and the turret got knocked off and it's stuck through the driver's hatch. The gun is. Yeah, I love that picture. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anyone do one. I think I was talking to maybe Sam Dwyer about it. He said he thinks he's seen one in 72nd scale, but I haven't seen that, so I don't know. So yeah, that's like the one thing that I really want to I guess improve, aka do and learn how to do. I'm slowly collecting everything that I need. I've got like 95% of all the stuff I need. There's like one or two things that I got to get that or figure out how I'm going to do to properly display the tank in that state, because yeah, it's gonna be a lot of work, I think, but we'll see. Yeah,
that's cool. I like that picture, the barrel sticking into the vehicle, the turret, like a lollipop sticking out of the top. Yeah, that's a great shot. And Sam Dwyer's Panther at SMC was really nice too.
Oh, yep, yeah, that's
don't
another
forget
one.
Sam. All right, Jensen, you're up.
How long you got?
All day, buddy.
It's one of those. I know last year I was like, oh, I want to buy less and do more. This year I've done nothing, but I have bought less. Anything I've bought, I think I bought at shows, which I think best time to buy stuff, really. I've not really bought myself anything modeling related this year, unless it was at shows. So that's one thing I've forcefully been improved on. But when it comes to modeling stuff, I don't know. One thing I learned doing this facade, and it was something I've been guilty of for years, is like being really unforgiving of myself with modeling mistakes. So like if I do something that doesn't look right, or I make an error or whatever on a model, I really beat myself up about it. Mm-hmm. And I think, oh, I've ruined it. Like, oh, I'm done with this project because it doesn't look right. Whereas with this facade, I did that a lot of times. So I was just like, so what? Just paint over it, repaint it. Like, why is it such a big deal? It really isn't. It's just a model. If you screw it up, it doesn't matter. So that's something I want to continue to improve on, like just really forgiving my modeling mistakes, because we all make mistakes, and anyone who says they don't. So there's that. I want to do a lot more figure painting. I've noticed I have improved my acrylic blending and like gradients with acrylics and that on figures and such. And I also did it on the windows of this facade. I have improved on that, but there's still techniques I need to learn, and it's not really so much as thinning my paint. That's not it. It's my handling of the brush. Really want to improve that. Also, understanding more to do with light and shadows and stuff, because, again, I'll start doing shadows and lighting on my figures. It looks good. I start trying to, quote unquote, improve it, and all of a sudden they've all vanished because I keep blending them all together. So it's just, again, the contrast is gone. So understanding, and that's not just on figures, that's on everything. If I'm modulating or doing any sort of scene or just anything with light, I want to improve on that. And here's an obvious one: just do more. Like I said, this year I've practically done nothing. I've done bits and pieces. I've done the projects like AK of Supply does. Loved them. I do like projects with purpose. That's fun. But yeah, just the most simple one: do more modeling.
There you go. That's the big one.
The Plastic Posse podcast is sponsored by Tankcraft. In addition to their awesome cutting mats, Tankcraft also makes some incredible scale modeling tools for your workbench. Want to keep extra thin cement off your bench and in the bottle where it belongs? Check out Tankcraft Glue Base, designed to stop glue spills in their tracks. The glue base is made from solid milled aluminum and comes with a stable rubber base pad and can accommodate most square and round cement bottles. And while you're there, check out their line of cutting mats and other unique modeling tools. Remember, Posse listeners get 15% off their first order by using the code POSSE15. So head on over to tankcraft.com. That's TANKRAFT.com.
All right. I really appreciate that, guys. I thought it was a good question. So I thought I'd share it with everybody. So now we're going to move over to TJ, and he's going to give us an update on the Operation Overlord group build.
Yeah, so I just want to do a quick reminder that we are co-hosting a very extensive group build with our friends over at the Model Geeks for the Madison 2024 IPMS Nats. we have a group for it. So please just look for Operation Overlord group build on Facebook and go ahead and join up. And the other thing we want to remind you is that it's not just for the group build. It's also going to be an IPMS special interest group, a SIG. So it's going to be everything related to Operation Overlord in the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France. So go check it out. Join up if you want to contribute. Just shoot me a message, or you can comment on the pinned post what you would like to contribute and get building.
All right, sounds great. That's great. All right, we're going to go back to another section that we haven't done for a little bit. We're going to talk about models we liked on the Plastic Posse webpage. So I'm going to start off. I took Marcin Starmox. He did a Panther OS D, the Tamiya 135th kit in the early Kursk theme. It's Gilco grabbing green. I love that model. He did a great job on it. I really like his tones. He muted out the green a lot, which really looks good, because if you look at some of the images, the green looks really muted, like they put it on in the field, which I'm pretty sure they did. Really good. It's got a little bit of battle damage on it, but it's just, he did a fantastic job, and I really, really, really like what he did with that. All right, Jensen, what do you got?
Thank you. This was only posted 2 hours ago before we started recording. It's Oliver Krebs 109, beautifully painted. Second World War German Luftwaffe camouflages. So hard to do with the mottling and the feathered edges and making it not look deliberately messy or obvious. It's just one of those paint schemes that are really hard to do. And I found that the feathered edges of the intricate like snake pattern and the mottling and the hard edge camo as well on the upper wings and upper surface, just really well done. Again, really smooth paint, really well painted. The colors look like vibrant and poppy. Yeah, it's just all round good modeling. Really, really stood out, because I know just how difficult it is to do that Luftwaffe paint schemes that the Germans just love to throw on their aircraft.
Yeah, that's a beautiful paint job. I swear to God, people that can do that paint scheme like that are just working with the devil. I swear, it's so not easy.
Yeah, he's brought a lot of depth to that BF-109E. The horizontal stabilizers and the wings where you have the hard edge camo.
Mm-hmm.
He spent a lot of work on those tones to vary them and model them. I mean, it's almost an approach you might see maybe more on an armor build than an aircraft, as far as the way the paint is finished, but it looks really sharp, and the sharp edge lines are sharp, and the, more freehand kind of stuff is a lot softer. I think he's really achieved that balance with his airbrush. It's really well done.
Yeah.
Nice model.
Beautiful work. TJ, what about you?
So I chose John Hale's, it's an M4 composite, is the Cupid boxing from Asuka, and he is working on the pigments on the lower hull. He was posted this morning, and then we were actually chatting about it in private messages after he posted it, because I commented on it. And John's a really good builder. He's a fellow Shermanaholic, like I am. Probably one of the most prolific Sherman builders out there. He's cool as hell, and his work is it's so good. I love it. I always like it when I see pigments being done, because it's not something I do a lot, because I'm scared of them. And so that was mine. It was really cool. He's hopefully helped me work up a little courage to do some pigments on the one I'm working on eventually. But yep. Tip of the hat to John Hale and his cool ass Cupid M4 Sherman composite.
That's nice work. All right, Doug, what do you got?
I chose Keith Hay, his Trumpeter 135th scale, SA6 gainful. The surface to air missile, it's beautiful. It's really cool. It's a very different subject. You don't really see people building these. It's an older kit, but he's done a fine job. Overall, it's on, UU Armor guys would probably be able to tell me what the chassis is and everything. But either way, this is very cool. I like his overall finish. I like his subject matter, and I really appreciate what he was able to accomplish with this. Old, not such a great kit, but he made it beautiful.
That's true. Very true. All right, John, what about you?
Got to give a shout out to Martin and his big M51 Sherman. Conveniently was in my basement 3 weeks ago, and I'm happy to see it being built. Great work, Martin. You improve with every build, and love the texture templates that you've experimented with. So keep it up, and we look forward to your next project.
Nice work. Scott.
Grant, I'm going to talk about A Tale of Two Steves. First one is I have been loving following along with our good buddy Steve Baker as he builds the new Tamiya F-35B. Man, he's taking those bays and all those, the fans. And, from a modeling perspective, the F-35B is just, a real canvas to work with. But Steve's just crushing it. He's been sending those out to the Plastic Posse Group, so check those out. Really, really nice. And then Steve Schaefer's Mang 132nd scale captured ME-163 Comet. He opened it up into sections, removed the rear fairing, the engine fairings, the cockpits open, and he threw what looks pretty convincing to me, a slapdash British paint job, and he even went to the trouble of replicating like paint runs on where he's broken the aircraft apart on the fuselage formers. He's got like sloppy paint work where the paint's run down to show that, the British, just kind of slapped a captured scheme on it while they were evaluating. A nice little touch. He's got it on a little wooden base. Just a nice build. You don't see that subject in captured markings that often. So well done, Steve. Really nice work.
Yeah, that is some really, both Steves are doing fantastic work. I love Steve Baker's comment or someone's comment about basically the F-35 is like painting a tank with an interior and making a jet at the same time. So that is definitely going to be an interesting build. All right. So Jensen's going to give us an update on upcoming model shows.
Indeed, I am. So, first of all, we have the third annual Winter Blitz show, which will be held on Saturday, January 20th, 2024, at the Museum of the American GI in College Station, Texas. More details can be found at www.winterblitz.com. Then we have Model Fiesta 42, which will be held on Saturday, February 10th at the New Braunfels Convention Center in New Braunfels, Texas. This year's theme is all things British, and rightfully so. More details are available at modelfiesta.com. The 2024 Model Mania show will be held February 17th and 18th at the Museum of Flight in Seattle, Washington. Check out the details on Facebook on the Northwest Scale Modelers page. Then we have the AMPS 2024 International Convention, which will be held April 11th till the 13th at the Century Center in South Bend, Indiana. Details at www.ampsarmor.org.
Grant, you had Jensen read those just for the theme for Model Fiesta, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. That's because he would be happy. So we want Jensen happy.
That pleases the British Museum.
Yes, it does. All right, let's move into some feedback with Doug. What do you got for us, Doug?
All right, we've got a couple here I'm going to read. Michael Geyer wrote in and said, what an amazing podcast episode. I don't know how you guys keep putting out great episodes all the time. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Adam Wilder, and I will certainly be on the lookout for his book. I'm always trying to find ways to become better. What I enjoyed and connected with most was the discussion with John Everett. His comments about embracing the suck while hiking just triggered a more positive approach to me. I've only recently come back to the hobby after having a family, and to be honest, I was extremely inexperienced and very basic. This, I think, has contributed to my hesitation in completing models for the fear of ruining them. Embracing the suck has helped me move past the fear and work towards just completing models in general. I can relate to this new mantra as I was a Queen Scout, which is an Eagle Scout equivalent, in Australia. I remember many hikes through the rain just like John. I had the pleasure of meeting John Bonani and Scott at High Plains Con 32 early November. It was great meeting and chatting with you both. I must admit, I was fangirling a little when I saw you both walk in about mid-morning. I was the Australian guy working on the Sherman Calliope from Monogram. I was nervous chatting with you both, but I certainly glad that I did. Anyway, he goes on to say, you guys are amazing. Have a wonderful holiday, and I look forward to many episodes and seeing you at the next show in Colorado Springs, maybe. Well, I'm glad you met John and Scott. I'm sorry I didn't approach you. I was there. I was kind of maybe shy. You were
buying all the Y-Wings.
Yeah, I was buying all the Star Wars models, all two of them.
For the record, Doug was scoring. We walked into Colpar, and there's a box of Tamiya kits, and I'm not talking about the 1970s kits. These are brand new kits. Doug's like flies on you know what, man. He's got one of those Ukrainian leopards. Doug, was that like $20? Yeah, $26. And
I got the Sturmovik with the Jeep. and I got that for 33.
Jeez.
Yeah. Then we get to the show and he shoves John and I like in the backs. And as we're recovering, he's like hitting the vendors one by one and scoring deals. No, in all seriousness, it was a pleasure to talk to you, Mike, about your modeling. And it was really, we picked up that you didn't have the standard Colorado accent right away. And it was great to meet you and shake your hand and look forward to your contributions here.
100%.
All right. Boz Slots. He says, I am at least an episode behind, but would love to give you my appreciation about episode 81, specifically the SMC special. Indeed, every model should once in his life visit SMC. It provides such a massive amount of energy and inspiration. I did hear TJ and John talk about their visit to the Arnhem area, and especially their visit to the Band of Brothers places between there and Veldhoven. If you would like, it would be a great honor for me to show you some places around Eindhoven next year, which feature in the earlier part of Market Garden, like the Drop Zone, Sohn Bridge, and the Neunen battles. Please continue with this great podcast. It really helps to sit more on the bench.
Boss, 100%. We will take you up on that. That would be fantastic.
Yep. I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah, for sure. And a special shout out to Boss. He's been a great, I'd say, ambassador to the hobby in Europe. He posts a lot of pictures from a lot of shows and a lot of events he goes to, whether it's reference material, model shows. I know he made the trip over to Telford and cataloged that and his trip through the Channel, and they drove over. So just really thankful that Boss is a listener and supporter and contributor, more importantly, to the Posse Group. So Boss, we'll definitely take you up on it. Look forward to it. Pencil us in. We will be there. Let's just plan on Thursday before the show right now. So sign us up.
Are you on the Triple P Facebook page? If you haven't joined yet, why not now? It's a great community with lots of new posts every day from all of our friends in the Posse. Come share your work and ask your questions. Check out John Gray's progress on his Winter Stug or Steven Nelson's TBM Avenger. Ask your questions like Zach Drizzle did when he asked about when the Soviets phased out 4BO and got great information from people like Stephen Reed, who said, you cannot make a functioning nuclear reactor without using plastic cups. Your answers await. Come and join us.
Steve Reed would know that. He is literally like a nuclear technician. That is what he does.
And that is simply scary that they use plastic cups.
All right. So send us your feedback and more. And you can reach us at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com.
Are you a member of the Plastic Posse Group page on Facebook? You should be. Remember that you can send your feedback and suggestions to us via email at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com or through any social media platform we have.
All right. Well, now it's time for our main feature. Grant and I were fortunate enough to sit down on last Friday with a couple of good friends. You've heard them on the show before, Spud Murphy and Martin Kovac, a.k.a. Uncle Nightshift, and kind of did a catch up with both of them. It was great. Turns out, as you'll hear in the interview, they have a connection from way back. Get yourself some snacks and some water, stay hydrated, and enjoy the feature. Welcome in, everybody, to another conversation with the Plastic Posse podcast. I am here today with my co-host, Grant Mayberry. How you doing, Grant?
I'm doing good. How you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. Also today, we have two of our incredible friends. They've both been on the podcast before. We're huge fans of their work. First of all, from the UK, we have John Spud Murphy joining us. Spud, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks very much. Thanks so much for having me back on.
It's always good to talk to you. We're waiting for John to get his hands on that new Andy's 1/16 scale Achilles, and I think he might be able to do something with that. So that'll be great. And then we also have our favorite uncle, the one and only Martin Kovac. Martin, how are you doing? It's been a while since we talked to you, buddy.
Yeah, it was, my friends. Thanks for having me. Like seeing you and talking to every time, it just puts a smile on my face. So I'm very grateful to be here.
Well, the feeling's mutual, and we got to get that voice out on podcasts more. It's perfectly made for this format. But that's a topic for another day. Well, let's start out. kind of before we started recording, we were sort of reminiscing and asking these guys if they've ever had a conversation together. And Spud, I'll start with you, but I think you guys know each other from back in the publishing days.
Yes, we do. Yeah, very long time ago with when I was editing Model Military International, contacted Martin to ask if he'd like to contribute an article for the magazine, and kind of that's where it all started, really. So yeah, he did an amazing first article, and it was one of those where it was like, I need this guy as a regular contributor, and model was great. The article was fantastic, so couldn't ask for any more when you're an editor.
Martin, now what was that like? Was that one of your first articles you ever had published?
It was the first model I posted on Missing Links. And pretty much a few days after, I got an email from John, like, can you provide me with an article? Of course, there was joy, but there was also stress because I didn't take any step-by-step photos. I was publishing it on our local modeling forums. So there was nothing of that. He said, no, it's okay. It can be just finished photos and just make the article longer or something. And yeah, it was just a lot of joy. And then I remember when he sent me the magazine, it was really early days. I think I just started university, so I was very active and very cringeworthy on Facebook. And I remember taking that photo of the magazine on my bed in my bedroom and writing a caption, something like, "Martin, your career as an internationally recognized modeler has just begun," or something.
That's awesome that was the, kind of your first collaboration between you guys. But if we could, maybe let's start out with sort of what you've both been up to recently. Martin, tell us kind of what you've been up to and maybe, what your near future plans might be, if you can talk about them.
Yeah, I officially became insane from bricks. I just completely lost my mind. Like my brain consists of bricks. And yeah, because I was finishing the hallway in my house, and as you can imagine, it was all raw concrete and bricks. And then I had this huge diorama that I just finished the other week, which is this huge water mill with a water wheel, a small creek, a Chevy truck loaded with sacks of flour and everything. So it was the biggest diorama I've done so far, and probably ever, because it's just too huge for me. And yeah, the water mill, again, lots of bricks, but it was a commercial kit, so I just had to paint them. And what's the best way to relax when you finish a project with lots of bricks? Start another project which is completely just about bricks. So yeah, that's what I've been doing just a minute before I joined you here.
All about bricks. Well, Spud, what have you been up to for the last couple of months?
I was finishing the 1/16th Andy's Hobby Sherman, really to get ready for taking it to Scale Model Challenge in Holland. So that was kind of a project up to the 11th hour, especially with the figures. And then returning from the show, I was almost at a bit of a loose end because that project's been on my bench for 11 months. And I've been obviously looking forward to the Achilles that's going to come out. So with the sort of time I've had in between and having a bit of a couple of week break from modeling, I decided to pull down two shelf queens, the RFM Sturm Tiger, to carry on with the ambush scheme, which, a bit like Martin, I was going insane with doing dashes and little cutout marks and masking tape all over it. Got to the point where I'd finished the base painting, then actually started to watch one of Martin's videos on how he weathered the Yag Tiger. And I was like, oh, this is out of my comfort zone. So I then pulled down the M48, the Vietnam M48, which was more in my comfort zone because it's green and it's dusty. So I feel I'm in my safe zone doing that one. So I've been working on that recently the last few days.
Man, the dust on that is incredible. I mean, heavy dust is like heavy mud or anything else is really hard to pull off convincingly. And it's really, really sharp what you pulled off as far as the variation of the intensity of the dust and, the top versus the bottom of things.
Oh, thank you.
Martin, will we ever see a 1/16 scale tank or vehicle on your bench?
Not a chance. I'm already struggling with storage space for my finished models, and I'm purposely choosing from now on the smallest tanks and the most storage friendly projects, something that I can hang on the wall probably or something, because there's just not enough space. And 1/16th model, phew, I will probably have to park it in my garage or something. I don't know.
John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you had out the main body of the Yog Tiger in 1/16th scale at Telford recently.
I did, yeah. And that's been a real eye-opener and made me think, I can't really build many more. Exactly as Martin's just said, the space to store the things is, each one now lives in one of these click-top storage boxes, and they do take an awful lot of room. Yeah, I think the Yag Tiger, well, not that there's much in that scale bigger than a Yag Tiger, but I think I'm probably going to maybe focus a few more 35th scale kits and do the Achilles and then see where it goes from there. But there again, there may be something new that'll just go, ooh, shiny, and then I want to build that as well.
I want to put both of you on the spot. I'll start with Martin on this, but Martin, what's one of Spud's builds that you kind of have maybe taken some inspiration from, or that you really thought was kind of special?
I hope this won't sound lame, but pretty much anything where he has a go with dust effects, because that's something else. I've seen other people try to take the same route as John. You can see the influence, but it's at least so far, it's never been exactly that. Either it was too smooth or too gritty or something, but John, he gets it right. And it's a very foreign style to me, because I was always about contrast, and stuff like that. And this is just, this feels natural, like natural, but raw. Like you're afraid to touch those models because you're afraid your fingers will get dusty as well, So yeah, I remember John when he was sending me photos of that Stuart and in 1/16 scale, and before that I think it was a Centurion in 1/35 scale. Yeah. So yeah, that Centurion, the dust was, and the Stuart, that's something. I'm not going to say that you took a turn for the better, of course, maybe just expanded because of the scale and everything. Like it suddenly opened up so many new possibilities for you. And when you were sending me those images, I was like what? Get out of here. Like those tiny scratches from a loose chain, Okay. This is way above my pay grade right here.
Well, those are good choices, that Centurion. I agree. I think your chef's kiss compliment is right on. All right, Spud. You got a lot to choose from here, right? But which one of Martin's builds kind of has influenced you, or you've taken inspiration from?
Actually, even from the very first article Martin sent in, because I just thought the finish, the style, the weathering was just, I was like, oh, I was almost a little bit doing it for selfish reasons, because I was like, well, if Martin writes an article, then I'll know how he's done it, and then I can copy his techniques and then publish it as an article at the same time. But to be honest, I've always been an avid watcher, and my highlight of my Friday was getting home and seeing what the latest Nightshift video would be. And whether it be the figures have helped me massively, I have to say, because I've always avoided figures, and it's given me a newfound confidence. Also, even the buildings, because now I've started to look at hot wire cutters, and I'm thinking, right, where can I buy blue foam from? And then thinking, right, that's going to have to really be for 1/35th scale and not 1/16th scale, because 1/16th scale dioramas are just going to be ridiculous. But weirdly, one of the ones I really, really like is the truck that Martin's just finished. I know he didn't enjoy it, and it was, but I thought the tones, the colors, the way the rust effects work on that olive drab, and then just things like the flower that's escaped from the flower sacks on the flatbed. It's just so many really, really nice subtle details in it. And but to be honest, all of them have been really influential to me.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to like with Martin's work. We twisted his arm behind his back and shipped him a Mac kit, part of that little scene that he put it in. He did a whole bunch of those sandbags, same kind of thing, and I'm going to sound like a total nerd here myself, but I could sit there and watch Martin sculpt bags of whatever for hours. and just it's amazing that he can make them so well and paint them to look so lifelike. So Grant, before we move on, what's a piece of Spud's work that maybe that you kind of really enjoy or you've taken inspiration from?
Oh, it's easy for me. The Centurion, right off the bat. Martin hit it on the head. The dusting on the Centurion has always been one of my favorite models. It's really it represents one of those models that just, it looks so real. And, the M5 is beautiful. All of his stuff is beautiful, but the Centurion for me was just the nail in the coffin to say. That was in a good way. Sorry, didn't mean that in a bad way. But it was, it was just one of those things that just, it reached out to me, I guess. And, for Martin, and I'm going to go back old school for Martin because I love your very first one, your mini art ball. That was when I found your YouTube videos. That was the one I found, and that process you went through, and you were the first one that actually walked a person through how to do the scratches, how to do the fading, how to do the mud. And when I found that, for me, it was very much changing in my modeling. It made me look at it a different way, of an more advanced way, more, looking at it as more of a processed way. So I that would definitely have to be my number one, if not that one. I really like your 148 scale Tamiya Crusader, the sand and black one you did, and the black you did that was really interesting, and I really found that an interesting model you built. So that's mine, Steve or Scott.
Yeah, I'll take those answers. Those are okay. One thing, we teased a little bit about with Spud talking about that 1/16 scale Achilles, which is going to be great. But, looking forward, Martin, maybe start with you. What's something that you haven't built yet that maybe you have in your stash, or something that's coming out, or maybe something that you wish were coming out? Give us an idea of what you'd like to do moving forward.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything because I'm working on it right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
but it's completely scratch built, so that probably doesn't count.
Wow.
But no, it's not a tank. It's not a tank. It's just a building. But I don't know. There's just so much, and sometimes I look at my stash and think about like what should be the next project. And I feel like, man, like I'm all set. I always wanted to build those models, and I have them here. It's just a matter of getting to them. So I don't really know. I could think about it for half an hour, and maybe I probably wouldn't get an answer for you.
We don't want to spoil it either since your channel. So. Well, Spud, what about you? I mean, and you can't say the Achilles because that's cheating, right? Right. But what else? What else is coming, or would you like to come out that you'd like to work on?
I think I'd really like, which is not available, would be a 1/16 scale M113. I've always liked those, and I think from a business point of view, it would be a huge seller because every nation has used them. There's so many variants. So many cool color schemes, been used in so many different conflicts. So the opportunities are sort of limitless, and it's not an unreasonable size in 1/16 scale.
Yeah, the size is great.
And then I'm thinking purely for myself would be, I'd have to do something like a Vietnam ACAV. That would be like the ultimate, just really for being able to do all the dust effects and all the stowage as well. That I always love doing the stowage that really, I feel, brings them model to life. So that would be kind of one that would be right up there, I think.
That's a great suggestion. Go ahead, Mark.
I thought about one. I think it already came out, but the new Panzer IV from Tamiya from North Africa. Because when I looked at the box contents and what I saw over the years, that the new Tamiya figures are like becoming really good, like competitive with resin figures. Like they're really nice. Tamiya basically is giving you a diorama in a box, because you have a new tooling Panzer IV, 6 figures, and even a motorcycle, I think. So you could just get the kit, wait for, I don't know, 4 months for Voyager to release a complete photo etch set for it, get some 3D printed tracks, and you have a diorama in a box.
Agreed. And like you were saying, the Tamiya figures over the last couple of years have been fantastic. The faces alone, what they're doing. We have a friend of ours that's a friend of the pod who works for Tamiya USA, and we've sat and talked to him a couple times. And I'm lucky enough to be out in Southern California where I can see those guys every once in a while. And they're doing 3D scans of human faces for it now. So, that's what they decided to do. It's unbelievable. Their figure sets are phenomenal. But I agreed, you're looking at a diorama in a box. I mean, all you got to do is make some signs and put a fuel or a 55-gallon drum out there with some signs stuck to it, and you're set to go. I want to ask John real quick. You saw the DOSWorks new Puma 1/16 scale Puma. How's that? That looks like a good kit.
It did look really, really nice. Yeah. It's but I know there's been some murmurings online about angles and stuff like that. But to me, it looked like a Puma. It looked great. Obviously, it was only like a early test sample, but it was really cool looking vehicle. So futuristic, and I really hope that will be a big seller.
Yeah, it's a huge vehicle too. I was actually surprised about the size of that when I saw one for the first time, the real one.
Look, the 251's the same. That's deceptively large. You get so used to thinking of it as such a small vehicle in 1/35th scale. Mm-hmm. When you see it in 1/16th, it is actually a really big lump of plastic.
Yeah, it is. I like your idea of the 113, like you said, though, because it's used today in the Ukraine. And, it's a phenomenal vehicle. I've crewed one before myself, and, it's a beautiful little vehicle, except the heater doesn't work all the time. But it's other than that, it's a great little vehicle. But I'd like to see that 116. Andy DOSWorks, if you're listening, please.
No, like you guys, I mean, I think space is important. Like I really like, I have an FT-17 and also one of the little Panzer II Ausfall, the Lux. I like the really small vehicles in 1/16 scale. So I'm hoping they'll do a Hetzer, but anyway, I digress. Recently, a guy that we all know, Mike Rinaldi, did a video and said some things, and I think some came across better than others. But I think maybe boiling it down and really want to get both of your thoughts on this. But essentially, I think buried down in the video, what Mike was saying was that people aren't taking as many chances, and that there's not as much innovation and new techniques and things like there were maybe 10 years ago. John, I'll start with you, but maybe, what did you think of the video? I assume you've seen it, and what Mike's saying here.
Yeah, I certainly saw the video and spoke to Mike in person at SMC. There are some valid points. Maybe the way it was worded could have been a little bit more diplomatic. I've thought long and hard about this, and the way the economy is at the moment, and the way the cost of kits now, if you put all this money, all this photo etch 3D printed parts and stuff into a model, you're probably more tempted to play safe with it rather than start pushing boundaries and experimenting, because you've put an awful lot of time and effort into that model and cost. So maybe that can hold certain people back. But I think also I was saying as well that everybody's attained, the levels have all come up now. And I think the models now, from my own experiences at SMC, so many models were so incredibly realistic. I'm just struggling to see where you'd actually go from here, other than them to start to not realistic, because you're trying to push a boundary that doesn't really need pushing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And that's a point I'm going to want to circle back to, the kind of the artistic versus realism. But Martin, what did you think of the video and the points that Mike was making?
Yeah, so I made a couple of points here in my notes. And first of all, I was completely okay with the presentation. I saw that many people were downright offended by it. I didn't see anything there. Maybe it's because I'm not a native speaker, so I didn't catch all those nuances. But I think it was perfectly okay. It was real raw, and there's very little to disagree with basically. But on the other hand, I was thinking like, not like who cares, but if I was asking if it's really that important, because okay, let's talk about taking risks, because I'm gonna be honest, I kind of felt guilty myself after listening to that video. Like I found myself in there a little, and because I kind of like to play it safe and maybe be just a little bold here and there. But when I was finishing my last diorama, I remembered that video and thought like, okay, try playing it safe. If you spend 2 months working on a diorama, 8 to 10 hours a day, and then you are about to finish it by pouring resin all over it. And, resin, no matter how good you are, it's unpredictable. Like there's this Asian modeler on YouTube, Thalasso Hobbyer, who only does epoxy resin dioramas, and even he made a blunder in one of his dioramas, and he admitted to it. Like, yeah, it was my mistake. It wasn't the resin's fault. So it can happen. And when you have this finished piece and you're dangling a cup full of resin and it's sort of dripping down, and suddenly you think, oh, what would happen if it dripped on the road, for example? There's no going back. So yeah, even with these things, you sort of take risks. But when we're talking about taking a risk, like really pushing the boundaries, like 15 years ago, like many people said, pretty much everything that could be explored already has been explored. So I think it will be more of a case of evolution than the next revolution. And the other thing, like, okay, he also says that the big names in the hobby, they sort of have this sort of responsibility, like setting the standard or pointing in the right direction or something. Again, I used to have this perspective as well when I was younger, and basically I was single. I didn't have any problems in life, and I could focus just on modeling. That was my whole life. All of my problems were just about models. But life's changed for people. People start families. People find girlfriends, or maybe their parents get sick or something. So suddenly, even if you're trying to push it, you just don't have the energy, or be it physical or mental energy, to think about some new ways. And a lot of people who pushed the envelope back in the day, those were industry professionals. So it was like really their job. They were in touch with other professionals. They could brainstorm ideas during lunch breaks. So it was sort of in there. And the thing about improving at all costs, I'm taking it out of context. It's not improving at all costs, but striving to improve with every model or every year or something. It can lead to some bad things. And it sort of reminded me of this quote from this book series, Three Body Problem. It's a sci-fi book series. And there was this character who, the moment they realized the threat for humanity, he was always about progress. Like, we need to move forward no matter the cost. And his efforts pretty much led to nowhere, at first, at least. So, trying really hard can actually push you back, and it might not be for the better good. We can talk more about that. I don't want to go on for too long, but those are my two takeaways.
Spud, you want to respond to that at all?
No, I think that's a really, really valid point. Exactly that. Sometimes if you try too hard, you end up going backwards. Absolutely. So I think, like I said before, unless someone's a chemist and concocts some new miracle product that takes us down a route that no one knew existed, it is just a gradual evolution. And with sort of social media now and YouTube channels, and there's so many people posting so much really, really sort of informative information, it's brought everybody up rather than just the one or two that have shot above everybody else.
Yeah, so kind of that idea of the the rising tide that lifts all boats, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much collaboration. We get to see, as you've spent the last 11 months working on that Sherman, we've been able to see what you've done and how you've done it, and we get to see Martin's videos, and we get to see other creators both inside the armor community and outside the community, and we get to ask questions and get pointers. Martin has a library of 3D printing STL files that, as he works on a diorama, if you're a patron, that you can use. I mean, it's really great. I also kind of wanted to touch on Martin. You brought up this idea of now versus 10 years ago. The other thing is, as far as innovation, I think that's got to be affected by the fact that the technology of the tools that we have in our hands, the kits that we have today aren't the kits that we had 10 or 15 years ago. Those kits a lot of times needed a lot of scratch building, a lot of aftermarket to even kind of make them viable. To Martin's point, sometimes now the manufacturers, the quality of the figures, the quality of the tanks or vehicles themselves is significantly better. And I would also add the paints, the pigments, the weathering materials that we have access to, I think are so different than they were 10 or 15 years ago. How would you guys respond to that, Martin?
I mean, yeah, that's true, but I kind of felt the same way when Mike was talking about the good old days, that sure, we don't currently have a figure in this community like the next Adam Wilder, someone who, because I remember it as well when I saw newest model or newest photo of just progress photo from Adam on Missing Links. Each time I could spend 2 hours observing every little corner of that model and thinking, how in the world did he manage to do that? There was that sense of wonder, like, how is this even possible? When some of us are struggling to apply a pin wash without melting the base coat, and there's someone here making these ultra realistic 3D models that look like they're made out of steel. But again, I think it's the circumstances. It's how the industry has moved, sort of transformed. And all I can say to this is just give it time. Someone will emerge, but it will happen naturally. It probably won't happen if you push someone and tell them, like, listen, man, you have potential, but you should try harder, and you'll achieve something. So, yeah, I think we just need to give it time, because again, and even if not, because here's the thing, like, things go in sort of waves. There's a curve of improvement, then the curve sort of levels out. There's a little bit of stagnation. Well, stagnation. Other people will, also take that technique and learn it. Then again, the curve will move up a little bit of progress. Maybe it'll go steeper because there's some new innovation. And again, it levels out, and maybe it'll stagnate, and maybe it'll stay that forever, And I'm totally fine with that, because I don't know, everything we see nowadays online is so amazing. The difference between those, just like Will said in motocross, the difference between the slow riders and the fast riders is just sort of blurred. And honestly, I'm okay with that, because it means even more inspiration for all of us.
Yeah, agreed, Spud.
Yeah, I was just thinking of when I was just looking along the competition table, certainly the Masters class at SMC, and just being blown away by the overall standard that was on display. And not for 1 second did I think, oh, they all look boring, they all look the same. I was just like in awe of how good they all looked, and instantly was thinking, I'd like to borrow that technique, or I'd like to know how that was done. And or you saw techniques that the principles of how they've been achieved, but they've just been achieved so masterfully that they were inspiring for that. And as an offshoot of that, like as Martin said, you can have an incline and then it plateaus. And during that plateau, it's almost like, I think maybe the analogy of like a rock climber. So the lead guys are up on the plateau, and then he's helping everybody else up onto the plateau for then him to sort of go up the next incline. And it was noticeable at Telford as well, where I don't mean to sound horrible, but you can walk along the club stands and there's what you perceive as a club modeler build, that there's not much in the way of sort of shading or detail painting and stuff. They kind of look quite bland, if I'm honest. But the guy's enjoyed it. He's enjoyed what he's doing. That's the main thing. He's got a passion for the hobby. But I did notice this year, particularly looking around, that the overall standard on the clubs had improved drastically. So, the high end may not be, evolving as quick as, say, Mike would like. But the good thing is, everybody else is improving. So, and I think if the more people you get up to a particular standard, once they've maybe mastered those a lot more the basic techniques or even the advanced techniques, you may find someone else that, not one of the perceived names, but someone that kind of comes out of the blue, comes up with something completely innovative. So, I think, but the more people you get up to that standard, the more chance you've got someone, taking the lead.
Yeah, I agree with both of what you're saying. And John, I really do agree that I've actually seen an increase over the last couple of years of local shows here, where you're seeing more people bring really good stuff. I mean, you didn't see 10, 15, 20 years ago. You did not see that. You see, and in my opinion, it's, I see the improvements, not what we were talking about. I don't see the one person coming out, stretching taking the envelope and ripping it off or whatever. I see micro changes. I see micro changes in dioramas. More vehicles are on dioramas. You see buildings now. You see more figures with their single models. You're starting to see weathering techniques that you didn't see before. I see a lot of people out here are doing their own welding, Martin. So they're following their good uncle. So they're doing all their own welding stuff on their their models. And I see it actually crossing genres too. I see it. You're starting to see it in Gundam. I see it in cars. I see it in aircraft over here. You're seeing that, and I think the changes are not the big, the big change of modulation or something, but you're seeing micro changes and micro growth every day out in the hobby. And these micro growths are maybe because we're in a plateau, don't know. But once we hit that, and you're going to get the change. You're going to get it no matter what. There's going to be a new Shep Payne out there. There's going to be a new Adam Wilde. There's going to be a new MiG. It's a matter of time. And I'm going to get off my rant there for a second. So I want to talk to you guys really quick about, the balance between the artistic models and the realistic models. For the longest time, it was mostly, and this is just me talking, it was everybody was doing doing artistic models, the modulations and stuff like that. And now I think you're seeing a lot of people shifting to the realistic models. So are you guys seeing that? Are you seeing the change? Are you seeing, and what do you think about the artistic compared to realistic? How do you feel about that? Go ahead, John.
I've actually I enjoy both. I like to look at both, and I'm inspired by both. For myself, it's just trying to find the balance between the two. Mm-hmm. Obviously I did my time in the military, so I've seen stuff that if you tried to replicate it as a model, people would just go, "Oh, that's a shame, bless him," and never mind. But sometimes it doesn't work on a model, so it's that I find that trying to get that balance between the two, that people look at it and go, right, I know what he's doing there, and it still looks nice. And at the end of the day, it has its 5 minutes of fame, whether it be in a magazine or on social media. But the rest of the time, it lives with me in a display cabinet, and I want to be able to walk past it and go, I'm actually quite happy with that, rather than what did I do there, And so, yeah, I definitely get influenced by both. But I do certainly think that people have they're going more for the realistic now. And they're using the artistic effects, but they're just toning them down. I think people like Lester Plaskett, when he does his mud effects on like his Abrams with the mind play, it just looks, as like Martin said, with dust, you look at it and you think, if I touch that, my finger's going to get wet and I'm going to end up with mud on, and it's just, it doesn't get any more realistic than that, so yeah, I'm definitely influenced by both.
How about you, Martin?
It was actually interesting when you mentioned color modulation. It suddenly just popped in my mind that interesting thing about color modulation, especially in the 2010s and so, was that people were making their models artificial with color modulation, especially when it was really heavy. And then they sort of started slapping all those realistic effects on it just to tone it down, And there was very little of that, like, let's just embrace completely that artificial look and let's just go for that. It was always, okay, I did it this way, now I need to tone it down, So I think it would be actually interesting to see someone go back to it and completely embrace it, like make it totally over the top, and how that would look like. And in the constant battle between artistic and realistic, I'm completely on the more stylized side of things, and maybe it's just because it's easier for me. It's sort of. I noticed that when I look at my models from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, what I'm doing now is completely different in terms of style. And so recently, as I finished my last work, again, it had all those stylistic signatures all over it. And when I was scoping my next project, I thought, okay, maybe I can take this specific reference photo and try to replicate it as realistically as possible. But as soon as I started working on it, it was like, yeah, I'm still going to try my best, but there will be something extra, or something will be a little bit different. So I don't know, because, photorealistic style is hard.
Yeah.
But then again, it comes down to what you're used to doing and how you're used to doing it. So, even if you try to make something like really realistic, there might be some situations where you just give it a little bit of that stylistic touch, and it'll still look just like the real thing, but as I like to say, slightly better, slightly more pleasing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, but if you ask me, I'm always stylistic all day. Every day.
Yeah, Martin, you brought up a couple things that really got me thinking. A lot of this, I think, comes down to motivation. I mean, if we're being honest here, and you've said as much in some of your videos, you don't really like working from photographs because you want the freedom to do what you do, and I think from a motivation standpoint, working from a photo is a challenge, but sometimes that might not be what people are looking for. I mean, what makes a model Spuds or Scotts or Martins is the finish, like the appearance of the model. That's what makes it uniquely ours. And so having that, I guess, artistic or stylistic freedom to do something, I think is a big motivating factor for me. Interesting to get your thoughts on that. But also this idea that you can engineer, if you make a 35th scale tank from a photo, that you can engineer a perfect replica in scale of that, I think is problematic at best. I think what you're looking for is something that tells your eye that that's what it is, but it's really, you have to be a bit of an artist to adjust the tones and the sheens to be in scale with the work that's in front of you.
Well, for me, Ed, I tend to not model a specific vehicle. I have occasionally, but inevitably, as soon as I finish it, and if you post the photos online, then you get bombarded with all the views that you've never seen before, and you realize that you've made 3/4 of it wrong because they were the sides you couldn't see. So I tend to go for what would be the next vehicle in the platoon instead of the if it's A13, that's this famous photo, I'll do like A14. So you're keeping within that unit, a similar layout with the stowage and the weathering and stuff like that, but it gives you a little bit more artistic license. I'll try to be as accurate as possible. I'll go on Google Earth now, and I'll go to Street View and I'll walk along the street to find the nearest patch of dirt, and to make sure that the sort of dust tones or the mud tones I'm using on the model are representative of that actual area, and so I'll kind of do daft things like that. But I think it's why I tend to avoid German vehicles, because World War II German vehicles, because they are so well documented, and if you can't just do a generic Tiger or a generic, because there's someone's going to know every chassis number and every unit and where they were, so I tend to go for something kind of a bit like the Sherman I've just done. It's of a particular unit, a real unit. I looked at where it was, operated in Germany at that point in, 1945. So I could get the kind of tones of the dust right. But then I had the artistic license by calling it Slugger and, putting the baseball bat and ball on it just for myself, really.
Yeah, you see, this is the biggest difference between us, because John, he goes out and he searches for authentic dust tones, and I always choose dust tones based on the color of the model. Like if it's warm color, yeah, I'm gonna use grayish colors. If it's a gray tank, I'm gonna use warmer tones, just so it can all play together. And I was just thinking, as you were speaking, John, like if I were ever to build a Panzer in German gray operating in Stalingrad, where it's full of, rubble dust, which is gray, I would be completely lost. I would probably have to paint the rubble yellow so I can use warm dust tones on the tank, because otherwise it would just look horrible if it were done by me. I would be completely lost. So there you go. Realistic versus stylistic.
That's pretty awesome, man. But yet there is no wrong. I mean, we talk about, we'll go back to something that you guys talked about, Grant. I think you brought it up as well. That as John, you said as you walk through Telford, you're noticing sort of, again, that rising tide lifting all boats, that as far as weathering and things that, as a whole in the hobby, that things are kind of getting better, at least the things you see in the show. And I've seen the same things. I've judged a lot of shows, and particularly like a good example is with aircraft and armor. About 10 years ago, everything was really dark because everybody started using washes, which are great, but they didn't build that into the planning of their builds at first. And I'm generalizing. And so you would have that, to me, a tone of olive drab with a wash over it. It would be very, very dark. And now, as you go through shows, you're seeing modelers across the spectrum taking that more into account, and probably again watching guys like you do what you're doing and everything, and now you're seeing that come back around. And so I've noticed that a lot. I think as far as the presentation of the models as well, I think that's really changing. I think in the last 3 or 4 years especially, I see more and more we're going away from that plane on a piece of paper or a tank on a plank is what we armor guys call them, right? But I think the presentation of the pieces certainly has become more and more important to me. But how do you guys see the presentation of the models? You see that evolving at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. Just even a couple of the guys from the Four Corners Club, obviously Kev Smith and Dan, who's been on the podcast. They incorporate the base becomes part of the overall scene, with the fact they'll have like rivets down the side of the base, and it'll be weathered as if it was part of a vehicle. Dan's done it with a British World War I Mark IV tank that's knocked out as it's about to sort of cross a trench, and just the work that's gone into the edges of the base is a work of art on its own. And Kev Smith's been doing it for a really long time as well. So yeah, it does make it really finishes the story, and completes the story. Well, I'm guilty of just at the moment, certainly with the 1/16 scale, there's just on a black picture frame with some black cards, just for pure convenience. And by the time I've finished the 16th build, I'm kind of burnt out anyway.
It's a tank on a really big plane.
That's right. Yeah.
Martin, what do you think about that?
Scott, you actually reminded me of something pretty interesting when you talked about those washes and models being too dark. John, I think you were active on those old MIG Productions forums, right?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, I just remembered there was one modeler. I think he was from Poland, but I don't remember his name. What he used to do, he would paint the model. This was in the color modulation era. So he would make the model really over modulated, like the highlights were pretty much white. And then he would slap undiluted dark oil paint completely all over it. It was completely covered, and he would wipe it away with wipes and cotton buds and stuff. And yeah, there was a lot of contrast. Totally dark, almost black. Every corner was almost completely black, and the highlights were almost white. And he always chose very obscure vehicles, like low quality short run resin kits and so on. But now that I think of it, it was really interesting and unique. Maybe that was a way of progress in one direction, but it was just sort of snuffed out by history. So maybe it's all those things, like these oddities, that can lead somewhere. Someone can push it forward, like this is my thing, I'm going to do it this way. Some people might borrow from it. You take one extreme, someone is doing something really extreme, you take small snippets of it. And what was the actual question? Presentation. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of see it, because as I said off the podcast, I'm not very active on social media anymore, but I see it on modeling forums. And when people occasionally shoot me a message, like I see aircraft modelers who are really like into, riveting, rescribing the panels and everything, buying those resin aftermarket sets. They're actually trying to make nice scenic bases for their airplanes. Like most of the time, what I'm used to seeing here is an airplane on a runway. So you have plain, flat slabs of supposedly concrete with a few stains of oil on there, but that's pretty much it. Now I start to see, like actually properly applied static grass and some shrubberies on the side. It's actually painted. It's not raw, unpainted, concrete. It has cracks in it. It's slightly shaded, so it fits in with the airplane, which also has some post shading on it. So yeah, I think the overall presentation, but again, it's a slow incline. It's not like rapid, and that's totally fine. And actually that's something very nice about it, that it's subtle, it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I know I did a little FJ for AK. We did a group build. Martin, you've done one of those as well. Really beautiful. But I got done with it, and I just, as a modeler, I mean, it was fine, but I'm not really feeling this. I just took a little piece of foam and made a base with balsa wood surrounds and threw some scenery on it. I mean, nothing like you guys would be able to do, but for me, it really changed how I felt about the piece overall. I ended up liking it a lot more, I guess, for lack of a more eloquent way to say that. But I really see that sort of happening across the hobby as a whole, and getting more and more done. So I guess Spud got to work on some 1/16 scale bases and figures and stuff. So now, I mean, the figures you did on your Easy 8, oh my God. Yeah, that's something you two have in common, right, Grant? So, when Martin, I've never done a figure before, so I'll do a couple figures, and then you're just watching the video and say, well, Spud, I don't really do good figures, but I'm just going to whip out a couple here really quick.
Yeah, I hate them.
You're just like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hate them both. I mean, I've been working on figures for years now, and I like you guys. Oh yeah, this is my second figure, and I'm like, God dang it. No, and I that's the thing too, is I think you're kind of. I think that's a change that we're seeing, is I call it a micro made change, that I guess, like I said earlier, is that, the figures are coming into play. Diorama bases are coming into play. I remember that gentleman on MIG's forum from Poland. I remember that guy very well. There's some things out there, and I do a lot of Warhammer gaming stuff, and you're seeing stuff. I gather stuff for my armor modeling builds and stuff like that. You're seeing the people do the same thing they call it the grim dark method, where they'll paint a figure beautiful, and then they'll just dump on MIG grime, and then they'll wipe it off. And it's a style that people are trying. It's working, but I want to get your guys' opinion on something. I think another thing the hobby is doing really well now is grabbing from other genres, let's say railroad modelers, figure painters, sci-fi guys, just artists alone. Do you guys, we see a lot of that. Do you think do you watch other videos on YouTube besides, modeling where you're learning ideas like that? Or are you trying to, do that kind of work? We all know that if you want to make scenery really well, you look at some of the railroad modelers out there that know how to do that kind of stuff. How about you guys? Do you reach out like that?
Well, for me, it was kind of, I used to sort of be on YouTube every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sort of enclosed in my own bubble. But I had the luxury of reading people's comments suggesting other things or other people to watch. And at first I was like, yeah, but that wouldn't really work because he's a railroad modeler and it's something completely different. And then I would just play a video from Luke Towen just as a sort of visual ASMR, just to wind down and see him build something. And then I would, grab some ideas from that. Like I said before the podcast about soaking the ground with alcohol first and then dripping PVA glue because it helps with the flow. So those small snippets, but you can, for example, take basics from, again, railroad modelers about building trees, but again, in 1/35 scale, those techniques wouldn't really work. But you can grab the basics or something that really catches your attention, like, okay, I can build up upon this, expand it further for my own needs, for my own scale. So that can help. And yeah, it's just all those different genres. Like when I tried painting my first figure, I wouldn't even imagine how figure painting would influence my own painting style with tanks, dioramas, and buildings. I employ some of those methods everywhere. Everything I do. So yeah, I think branching out, especially when you feel like when you're picking up a new model and the only thing that excites you is just that it's a new model and not that, oh, I'm finally going to try this or I'm finally going to make this type of finish, then I think it might be actually beneficial and enhance your fun factor if you try to branch out. Try to implement something new, try to learn some new trick, something completely different that you can implement, and you would be surprised how it would influence your work from there onward.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree with Martin. I was just thinking of some of my own experiences, especially when I used to edit Model Military magazine. We tried to have like a nice spread of articles, something small scale, something German, something modern, a full-size reference article, and a weathering article. And I remember a guy saying, I would love you to do a weathering article on mud on a Tiger tank, say. And I said, oh, actually, 2 issues ago, we just did a weathering on mud, but it was on a Sherman tank. And the guy said, yeah, I didn't bother reading that because it was on a Sherman tank. And it was like, but it's mud. It's all the same, but that's how kind of bore-sighted these people can be. And, so he wouldn't read an article just because it was on a green tank and he only built German stuff. So it's really difficult to get sometimes people to say, look, if you're struggling with figure painting, for example, or painting stowage, watch a figure painting video. They'll explain all the highlights, the shadows, the shading, and that will work for soft stowage on the back of a vehicle, for instance. I've watched videos on painting Warhammer and stuff like that, and just the way that they apply the paints and draw the brush so that the most opaque part of the paint is at the end of the stroke, where I thought that was the opposite way around. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. And it was just such an eye opener. And if it hadn't been for looking at those other genres, I would never have known, so I'm a real advocate of just checking other videos, checking other genres, and you'd be amazed what you can pick up from those.
That's a really good point, Spud. Last year and this year I went to a show here in the US called MMSI, and it's always been kind of primarily a figure painting and vignette and diorama kind of show. There's more and more sort of traditional ordnance is what they call it, planes and tanks. A couple of the things I saw there that really I thought, man, what would it be like to make a vignette? The first thing was there are some figure painters that will paint figures or busts in grayscale. So like you're watching a black and white movie, right? Only that's the way they painted it. And then the other thing is from the on the fantasy side, the Gunpla builders, a lot of the really high end guys there, they're painting very stylized finishes, almost like you're looking at at your figure, your robot or whatever, your big suit, whatever those are, in a comic book. So like they're actually painting on like ink and ink strokes and brush strokes and things like that. And I thought it'd be really, really cool to see, you know, an armor person maybe take one of those very, very stylistic approaches and use it on a vignette or just maybe just an armor piece. I'm waiting for volunteers, Grant. I don't think I'm
sorry.
That.
Sorry, you can go ahead and cut that out. So I agree. Some of the things that you're seeing now, and I was at MMSI this year, which was a great show, by the way. You're seeing more of that, reaching for better. And that's another show that here in the States that you walk in there and you're like, the craftsmanship of what you see is phenomenal. I mean, you have guys like John Rosengrant, Mike Blank from England, stuff like that. And, you know, these guys are very well known. And they're one of the great conversations I heard there was that there was some figure painters talking about the definition of light, how light hits a subject, how light hits a figure from a direction. And they were talking about they would wish they would see somebody do like a early morning or late or the sun going down where a tank was coming up a hill and it was the light was focused on the front of it and there was casting the shadows, you know, and I don't think you would have heard that conversation 10 years ago because of there wasn't the intermingling of the
minds.
The genres. Yeah. But it was you don't see that anymore. And I think a lot of it is because of guys like you, John and Martin, that you're pushing people to see things differently, which we haven't seen in a little while, in a long while, in my opinion. But I think more people in different genres are looking at your stuff than people from your genre are looking at other stuff, if that makes sense. So I think we're having more of a crossover from other people coming in than other people going out, is what I'm trying to say.
Martin, sorry, Grant. Martin, I've always kind of wondered this. I mean, certainly you have to have conversations with people that are Patreons that aren't armor builders.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any way to tell, but I'd be curious to see how many people that aren't armor modelers that maybe have never built a tank, but that watch all your videos.
I personally know about a few that just sent me a message like, hey, I'm not even a modeler at all. They're just like looking at your stuff and I want to support you. And yeah, then there are, of course, aircraft modelers, a lot of figure painters, and especially the Warhammer crowd, who are just there to pick up on the techniques and maybe ask questions when they have problems. And many times when I see people that they send me a message like, I'm going to try my first armor model or something, I tell them, awesome. And if you like it, do what you want to do with the first one. But then if you really like it and you want to stick to it, or maybe included with your other models, try putting some of that background of yours into it, you know, and see where that goes.
Yeah, that's a great point. We were kind of touching on that before that, but if you're a figure painter or Warhammer painter, bring those same techniques to the tank, right, or the vehicle that you're doing.
Exactly.
That's a great idea. What about you, John? I mean, do you have somebody that'll come by Telford or SMC and say, this is really great, I've never done this, but I just really like it?
Yeah, actually at Telford, there's John Bryan, who's been on the show.
Yeah, John's a good guy.
We had quite a long conversation, and he's said he's an incredible aircraft modeler. But we spent quite a lot of time just talking about the Sherman, and I was going through techniques, and he's saying basically he was looking at what he could incorporate maybe on an aircraft project, and which of these sort of techniques were transferable, and just how I went about some of those techniques, because they are quite, I guess, alien to an aircraft modeler. So yeah, it was nice when you get a broad spectrum of people come up and kind of appreciate the work for what it is, or at least they understand what you're trying to achieve with the model when they recognize different techniques and different effects and understand them. And if a layman understands what you've tried to do, then I feel like I've achieved the goal. You've got it right. If a modeler understands it, it's because we're all kind of on singing off the same song sheet. But when someone from the general public go, oh, I recognize, I like that, I like how you've done this, and I understand it, and I think it, the models work then.
Yeah, I think we use the word weathering, at least here in the States. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think in other places, I think they're a little bit more precise. Maybe I think they talk about, patina and weathering sort of only means, dust and mud and rain, right? Whereas things like fuel stains or scuff marks in the paint are something completely different. That kind of goes back to maybe looking at armor models as through the lens of a figure painter, or through the lens of somebody that maybe an aircraft modeler that would bring a different approach to it. I think I can see that. Building on that, Martin, inspiration, we kind of talked about inspiration outside of the armor community. You brought up Luke Towan, I watch his videos a lot. I'm also a big fan. I don't know if you're familiar with Chuck Doan. He does kind of armor adjacent, railroad adjacent models, and he'll spin
realistic models.
Yes, just really amazing stuff. Things like that. But what about within the armor community? You've got to see, some things inside of the community that inspire you. So who do you look towards? Who kind of makes your eyes get a little bit bigger when you are really engaging with other models online in whatever format that is?
Well, this is a very... That was a low blow from you, Scott. Because
ouch! Oh, sorry.
because if I want to be completely honest, which I think I can, without sounding really bad or anything, but I don't really follow that many people anymore. Like I said before the podcast, I uninstalled all my social media because it was really affecting me mentally. And it was a huge help. It really made a difference. So I kind of lost touch, but maybe that's the reason why I talk about branching out to other genres and looking up to other people. But really, my biggest sources of inspiration over the past couple of years were people. Okay, they might be doing armor because they're making historical, armor dioramas. But it was not really the armor part. It was either the terrain, the scenery, the buildings. Like I said, sometime in the past on this podcast, Volker Bembenek, modeler from Germany. Yeah, his amazing, beautiful, highly stylized dioramas. It's just sometimes I open my folder with pictures I downloaded from his Facebook profile, and I just look at them and just admire them, and feel good. Like I can actually observe this. Now, recently, I bought a book from French modeler Emmanuel Noalier, who's making these 3D pictures of deteriorated buildings. He just makes a flat facade with some relief and everything, but it's just one side, and he puts them into deep picture frames. And that's something that really inspired me recently, because I want to improve my building painting techniques, because I feel like I sort of lack, muscle memory there. So yeah, I guess it's that. Like, really, I'm sort of just branching out nowadays.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we should have known that from all the bricks that you talked about earlier. Spud, what about you? Anybody inside of the armor community, or maybe somebody adjacent to it, that really kind of wows you?
I have to say, a lot of the guys at the Four Corners Club, I'm so blessed with the quality, of the work. The guys are just so talented, and because we have our own group chat and we're constantly sharing pictures of what we're working on, it's just so much inspiration. Outside of that, when I first sort of started, it was, you know, the Verlinden, Chet Payne, sort of them, the MIG came along, Tony Greenland, you know, he was very influential back in the early days of sort of Euro militaire. And yeah, just so many, you know, like things like Roger Herkman's, his work, it's that incredibly gritty realism, you know, that I absolutely love. That Leicester's the same, Leicester Plasket's the same, that they've got a very similar style, which I really like. But I've also, you know, been hugely influenced by people like Adam, and you know, I was really hooked on the modulation to start with, and then as Martin said, you know, you try to tone it down a little bit to suit my own eye, because we've all got a different eye for what we like and what we perceive as what looks good to us. So yeah, you know, the list is endless, and it could be, you know, even people that, you know, don't actually sort of know the person's name, but I've just seen their work on social media, and it's done exactly what Martin's done, and you end up screenshotting these pictures and using them as reference later on, you know. So yeah, it's too many to mention, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's you guys have brought up some really good names and stuff like that, and you know, it's funny when you hear things like that. For me, it is, because you know, I look up to both you guys. You guys are doing wonderful stuff. But I want to talk about real quick is I want to get off I don't want to put anybody in any more spots like Scott likes to do. Who's your favorite? Oh, geez. Come on, man. Let's talk about the storytelling, you know, and we are seeing that more in our models. You know, and storytelling could be anything from, Martin, your signs that you put on a diorama, or, you know, Spud, your baseball and your baseball mitt in the back of your Sherman. Are you guys going in with these ideas? You know, I guess the question is that, do you have these ideas of your storytelling worked out before you go, or is this just something that just kind of flows with the system, or flows with your build? Is that how you do that? So I'll start with Martin. How do you feel about that?
I said it a couple of times in my videos. I'm always limited by the selection of figures on the market, and whenever I start a project, for example, I pick up a specific model. Let's take, for example, that Valentine that I did. I knew that, okay, now I'm going to build this Valentine. It's going to be Lend-Lease, Soviet vehicle, and I'm going to look for some figures for it. So at first I found a few sitting tankers that would go into the hatch. So I chose the one from Alpine in the blue overall. And then I was thinking, okay, but let's make it a diorama, because one figure sitting in the hatch isn't really a diorama. So let's see what else is out there. And so I was looking through some sets, like, yeah, this sounds pretty good. Then I found those soldiers, you know, with a machine gun. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, they are designed for a KV2 because one of them has that raised leg, and maybe I can sort of fit them on the tank, and we'll see how it will go. So. And all of a sudden, yeah, I was positioning them around the tank. Like, yeah, this is a pretty good composition. I looked at it from afar. Yeah, it actually makes sense. You know, the one soldier is standing on the tank. He's grabbing the machine gun. The other guy is giving that machine gun to him. The tanker is just sitting there looking at them. And that's pretty much it. People always talk about storytelling in models and also obviously in dioramas. And honestly, I'm terrible at storytelling because I'm just, call it lazy, because I want to buy something and assemble it and paint it, you know, as far as figures go. So, you know, in this regard, my work is very simple and straightforward. And on the other hand, when I listen to podcasts and people always talk about storytelling with weathering or like on models, and yeah, there's a lot of truth behind that. But sometimes I feel like people are looking way too much into it. Like they consider this little stain a great piece of storytelling, while in reality it might be just, it just looked there. It just looked good there, you know. It was missing something, so I put it there. You know? Yeah.
I would like to rebut the gentleman from Slovakia. First of all, hashtag faults, Martin. You're really good at storytelling. And what I mean by that is, okay, maybe there may not be some big elaborate, well, this is Carl and, you know, he went and did that. But But what I love about your pieces are, and you've mentioned this before, I think in our podcast, but you really present figures that are at peace. They're at moments of peace. And, I think so many armor dioramas have these, in most cases, poorly executed moments of terror and other things. I don't mean to denigrate that as a muse. But in general, I think figures bring humanity to our models, and your figures really make me feel a sense of that, of peace and ease. And I think that takes work and that takes talent, and that's my opinion, and I'm not changing it.
Thank you.
and then the other part of it is the way that you blend your elements together. And so I love watching something come together, the way that you put your videos together, where like you've said, I don't think you always know exactly where it's going to go, and then it goes. And I really like the way that your structures and your figures and everything kind of tend to really become cohesive. And again, that's, to me, that's storytelling. You've got a cohesive theme. Everything looks like it should, and it has that element, that humanity, but also the serenity to it. So I'm going to be quiet now and let Spud talk. But anyway, I needed to say that.
Thank you.
All right, Spud, what do you think?
I wish I could tell the stories with a lot more of my models. I tend to get to the point, because I've always had a bit of a mental, ironically, taking a step back, when I first edited the Model Military, and before that, I did quite a few articles for the French magazine Steel Masters. And I was always putting figures with dioramas, and they were mainly base coated in sort of acrylics or enamels, and then finished with oils. And I was kind of quite happy with them, and I kind of fairly standard sort of process towards finishing them. And then I got to a point where I think I saw so many other modelers' figures just were so much better than anything I could produce. So I just stopped adding figures because I just couldn't get there. So I've got an awful lot of models that have got open hatches with the one day I'm going to do a figure, or I'm going to do figures to go in there. Before the 16th scale Sherman, previously to that, had been Vietnam Sheridan that I did two crew figures from Bravo 6. And the idea that was supposed to be in a diorama, but the next shiny new model came along. So I kind of shelved that, and, was easily distracted by the new plastic that turned up. But I tend to try and incorporate a bit of a story. Sometimes they're not fully finished, where I did a Challenger 2 that was supposed to be on the test range, and there's a tin of WD-40 and a blue roll on the front fender where they've been, cleaning the machine guns and stuff like that, and the mechanic's been there. With the Sherman, the big Sherman, that was it wasn't a bright light bulb moment. But as I was kind of watching things like Band of Brothers, Fury, just to try and get some inspiration for, just the overall look of the vehicle and the feel. It was the very end episode of Band of Brothers where they're playing baseball. And then thought, I knew that they were issued to the troops a baseball and a bat and a glove. So I thought that would be quite cool to do. And then watching Saving Private Ryan, where one of the characters has got Brooklyn on the back of his jacket, then I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a loader or one of the crew members to have like New York Yankees on the back of his jacket? And so that's where the baseball bat and glove came from, and the bucket with the balls. But then that put the pressure on me that I needed to now add some figures, which were graciously sent to me by Roberto Real from Royal Model. And, they're obviously not cheap, these figures. So I really wanted to do the best job I could with them. And they ended up being stripped in VMS clean slate 3 times, and again, as I'd said earlier, I literally have Martin's video on pause and Calvin Tan's videos on pause or on YouTube to sort of go, right, I'm getting there. I've got this. And then I'd go to the next step and go, what went wrong? So they'd go back in the strip. So anyway, it was kind of 11th hour was happy with the way they looked, and they completed the story. So the tank's called Slugger, obviously the reference to the baseball. But I also thought, because it's an up-armored Sherman, it was used to slug it out with the German armor at the head of a column. So it sort of tied it all in my mind. And if anybody else got the reference, great. But if not, I was happy with it.
Yeah, I love the baseball implements, and as an American, especially, the fact that a gentleman from the UK would put that in, it just to me, it really spoke to me. It really did. Well, I kind of wanted to talk to you guys maybe about a couple of specific things that you do, and then we want to have time for you guys to maybe ask each other a couple of questions or whatever you'd like to talk about. But Spud, I want to start with you and kind of the way that you approach earth elements, specifically dust and also mud, especially on the larger vehicles where you're really bringing that third dimension to it. You're really bringing like the depth of the dust or the clumpiness of the mud and what you're doing there. What's inspiring you to do that? Because I think you're really excelling at that, and it's certainly inspirational for me.
Thank you. I guess a lot of it is, possibly said before from, I grew up racing motocross. So I've spent many, many hours pressure washing motocross bikes and, seen caked on dry mud with all the grass that's bound into it, and obviously all the wet sloppy mud. So I've had intimate kind of knowledge of the stuff, and I was desperate to try and convey that in the models. And certainly with 16th scale, I feel it's as much about the textures as the colors, because in 35th scale you can just airbrush some dust on, because in that scale you wouldn't feel it, but in the say 16th scale you should be able to almost feel that dust. So that's really where it's come from. And with the advent of so many amazing products now that you can get, where you've got, your muds in a tub and these things, so you can get consistent results with it. And I've just found that's made it so much easier to do. For a long time, and I always knew what I wanted to create, but the products weren't necessarily available for you to make it easier to, and more readily accessible. So I think that's been a game changer for me, is sort of, the companies like AK and MIG and Vallejo that have started to produce all these texture products that have just made my life so much easier.
I think I agree with that a little bit, but like I said, on your dust, it's that fine line of putting too much dust on or not enough dust. But I just think that Martin, I think, talked about a little bit earlier in your Centurion, your Vietnam Centurion, just you straddle that line and really, really have that down well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's again, it's that fine line between the artistic and the realistic, because I still want the model to look nice to look at, but I still want to convey the environment that it's operated in. And yeah, it's just, I've been fortunate to just get the balance right with it. But ironically, I was to say, Martin picked up on this, where I mentioned, I'll go on Google Earth and look at the colors of the soil in that area. But I'm a great advocate of, if I'm doing a dark green vehicle, I wouldn't want to put dark mud on there, wet mud, because they just all blur into one mess. So I tend to go for, if it's like an olive drab vehicle, I'll go for a lighter dried mud or dust tones, where if I was doing, say, a German sand vehicle, that would tend to have the darker earth and mud tones, because you get the nice contrast and they complement. Because, I was thinking, if you took a black and white photo, you wouldn't be able to tell, if it was all the same tone. It just looked kind of really strange. So I do go down that route that Martin does, where I want to make sure the colors and the tones complement and contrast at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense now that you guys have pointed it out. But I mean, that's fantastic. Well, Martin, I want to ask you about, and I know it's not your favorite thing to do, but your use of water. It's just so good. That wrecked Mark IV that you cut in half, which made us all cry a little inside, but it was worth it in the end. But a lot of your dioramas, vignettes have incorporated that water, and everything just seems natural. Having little things like having a puddle next to a deeper pool of water, just little things like that. So, where does that come from?
I guess it's just about overcoming an old fear of mine, because I was always afraid to experiment with epoxy resin and water. Like, that was always something that I could only admire, but I would never find the guts to actually try it. And when I finally did with the Mark IV, I realized that, it's not that hard actually, So then again, it opened a new door for me, and everyone who tries it will probably feel the same way. Like, okay, I already know how to do it, and I can take any scenery and just spice it up with a little bit of water, because it's a completely different texture. It has, that shiny quality to it, and it's just cool. You can fill an empty corner of a vignette with a tree stump or some tall grass, or you can put a creek in there, and it's suddenly it has, I don't know, in my eyes, it has more value suddenly, because, other technologies went into that, a completely different skill set required to pull that off. But then again, every time I do water, it's really basic, like things like splashing water. I haven't tried that yet. I mean, I knew a few methods, but just in theory, like, I have a general idea on how to do it, but I just didn't find the courage, because again, it's what I said about resin. Resin is unforgiving, man. Like, you make a mistake, there's no coming back. You can't just wipe it off or repaint it. It's going to leave something there. It's immediately it seeps into something, and you'll see it, that it was there. And it happened to me a few times, and I sort of managed to cover it up. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you step out of your comfort zone, and you take 2 steps out of your comfort zone, and you're just fine staying there. There's no need to take further steps.
John, for the dust, and Martin on the water, did you guys, I probably should know the answer to this, but did you guys use a mule before you put it on a piece, or did you just go forward on your model? Martin, I'll start with you. I mean, did you just start pouring resin on your model, or did you have some poor little mule that gave its life to prove the concept?
The only mule I had with the Mark IV, it wasn't a mule. I just tested different colors for the actual tint of the water. Okay. I tried them aside, but I didn't even mix the resin. I just took a little drop of resin and tried mixing it with different types of paints, enamels, water-based acrylics, Tamiya paints, figure out what works, what doesn't, and then what specific tone would look the best. That was pretty much it. My whole aim with that diorama was that if I'm going to fail, I want everyone to see it.
It's going to be epic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. Spud, what about you with the dust? I mean, did you just start throwing it on the model, or did you have a victim to kind of test different things on?
No, I'm a nightmare for just going straight into the model with it. I can't say I've ever had a mule model. I tend to use the base of the bottom of the model will probably be where I'll do some experimenting, because, obviously touching on the subject, I'm not one of those that weathers and paints the bottom of the model, apart from where I use it to practice and to also see what the tones are going to look like. So, once I've got the actual color of the vehicle on the bottom, and then I'll just try the dust tone. And if I think that's in the ballpark, then I'll just go for it from there, and I always think that if I'm adding the dust tone, the worst that can happen is I'm just going to have to just reapply the base coat. So I tend to, when I'm adding the effects, I know that at each stage, if I get it wrong, I've only got to go back one stage. I haven't got to go right back to the very beginning. So it may seem like I'm a bit cowboyish with it, but I think because I've done it on quite a few models now, that I'm quite confident with the results that I'm hoping to achieve. So I can, play a little bit safe, but kind of be convinced that it'll be okay in the end.
Well, if you're cowboyish with your dusts, I think we're all looking over there at the Kovac kid there with the resin, man, talking about being a cowboy. Holy cow. No, that's great. Okay. Final question, then think of some questions for each other. I'm going to start with Martin. What is the single hardest part of doing a diorama? It could be wet effects, it could be the water we're talking about, it could be the face on the figure. What is the hardest part for Martin in your projects?
I can't really think about the hardest, like the amount of workload or difficulty, but I can tell you the most annoying parts.
Okay.
If that would be sufficient. Applying the veneer on the sides.
Yep.
Then painting the groundwork with enamels is just a lot of back and forth, and I just hate it. Applying the static grass, mainly because it's a lot of mess and it's really hard to film it. Like, put the camera angle underneath the static grass applicator. It's just so annoying. And what then? Most fun, definitely airbrushing grass. And I don't know, sort of hardest, but also not, is the initial planning and composition, because, okay, nowadays I don't feel so pushed by time anymore since I don't upload weekly, but a lot of that planning just always feels to me like I'm just sitting there wasting time, not doing anything. But just because you're not physically doing something doesn't mean you're, doing nothing. It's all happening in your mind. You're experimenting with different settings. So
you're creating, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as we probably all experienced, a little bit of planning beforehand goes a long way, because you can build a technically beautiful diorama, but if it's composed poorly, it's probably not going to be your favorite piece, So yeah, I'd say those. And painting wood if the wood grain texture sucks. So when you have laser cut pieces made from chipboard, which is impossible to texture, and it has this weird sort of like 3D printed look to it, all these tiny steps from the laser, that's not fun at all to paint.
All right, Spud, same question. What do you dislike the most? Maybe not the hardest or whatever, but what do you dislike the most and what do you like the most?
I dislike the most definitely has to be individual track links.
Oh.
And coincidentally, the M48 that I've been working on at the moment, I'd say that's been a shelf queen for a good couple of years. And I don't like the AFE Club individual track links. And obviously Takom had recently released a set. So I bought them, and there's 6 parts to each track link. And I'm actually I was building them right up until we've started this podcast. I think I'd been putting them off to the point where I wanted to see how the dust was going to come out on this M48 before I committed to building these tracks. So I'm at a point where I'm happy with the way the dust is coming out. So I'm like, okay, I'll commit to building the tracks. But yeah, they're definitely for me the worst part. And also, I think really it's the figure painting. I know I seem to have fluked the crew figures for the Sherman, but I annoy myself because I should really, if I've got some spare time, start painting a figure. But I won't. I'll end up watching stuff on YouTube and stuff, and I really should discipline myself and go, right, this time would be far more beneficial if you actually painted a figure. You're never going to improve unless you practice.
True. Yeah.
All right. Well, Spud, what's at least one, maybe do more, but what's a question you'd like to ask Martin? If you could pick his brain, what would you like to know about his work?
Oh, God, wow. Do you know, it's slightly off topic, but it wasn't so much a question, but I was really pleased when Martin announced that he was going to stop the Friday uploads.
Yes.
Purely because I know exactly what the burnout's like. When I was editing the magazine, when it's, your full-time job, then in the evenings you're building models, you go to model shows the weekend to represent the publication, and you lose a lot of the enthusiasm. And I'm really struggling to think of a question. There's so many things I could ask about his modeling. But the great thing is he posts it all up on YouTube. So, and it doesn't leave anything out where, back in the days of magazines, often you'd see people would write an article and then the bit you wanted to know about the most, they just never mentioned. It was that knowledge is power, and they didn't want you to know this little technique that would elevate your models. So yeah, sorry if I'm sounding like I'm sort of avoiding the question, but I'm kind of really struggling to ask.
Up until a year ago, my question was always, and I did ask him this, why are you being a barbarian with those scissors to pull those parts off the sprue? Please stop. So that would have been my number one question.
Actually, it does make me, when I'm watching him cut the edges of the wood veneer from the edge of the diorama, I'm kind of like, I keep glancing over at the first aid kit, it just really unnerves me watching him. I'm like, I know we all cut plastic, all day, every day, and we're in close proximity to Scalpel blades, but when you're watching it, I'm like, I can't breathe until that scene's finished.
I've actually cut myself really badly on the last diorama.
Oh, yeah.
Can I just tell you one really silly little story? When I was in the Air Force and I was based at a camp in London, we were really, really quiet, and I'd taken in a Verlinden 1/16 scale Tiger, the horrendous resin thing to work on. And I was cleaning the resin, and I managed to cut across the top of my thumb with a scalpel blade. So I went across to the medical center, literally across the road. So they put a couple of stitches in and bandaged me all up. And they said, "Oh, how did you do this?" So I had to lie to them and tell them I was cutting the double-sided tape for putting the cheek pad on the rifles. And so before my thumb had completely healed, I started cleaning up more of the road wheels and cut myself in exactly the same place and opened up the stitches, and then had to go back over to the medical center. And they were like, "What have you done now?" And I said, "Oh, exactly the same thing." So they phoned my boss and said, "Don't let him work on the guns anymore." So yeah, we've all been guilty of it.
Oh man, that's awesome. Martin, what about you? Do you have any questions for Spud?
I actually have two. I just had one, but I'd like to catch up on something that John said. But first, my original question, quick answer. John, when you used to send me occasionally those inspirational photos you took outside, like old moss-covered rock walls and stuff, it sort of felt like, you saw this, you thought about me, like, he might find it useful, but I sort of felt like you also have a little bit of appreciation for this, sort of decay on urban decay stuff, So I was wondering if you ever been tempted, like, how it would be pretty cool if I tried replicating this in miniature.
Oh yeah, definitely. I when I left school and went to college, I trained to be a draftsman and architect. So it's always been a passion of mine. And every time I'm out, I'm always looking at, sort of broken, windows and decayed wood and paintwork that's flaking off. And my phone is full of photos in like a reference folder for the rainy day that I'm going to build, do a diorama and try and incorporate as many of these sort of, like techniques in. And as you were saying earlier, I've seen all the guys doing the AK building facades, and I think, I so want to do that. That's something that I really like. It doesn't have to be military at all, but I think if I wasn't building armor models, I would probably do models of buildings.
Yeah, that's Martin also posts on his Patreon a lot, and in his channel, his community, a lot of those kinds of shots, and they're really, really valuable. The other thing, Martin, you need to know about Spud is he's incredibly generous, and even though I'm talking about him in the third person, he did a model of an Achilles that I've always just really, really admired, and I sent him a message on Facebook and I said, hey, I just wondered if you had a couple shots of the details. I can't remember what it was, if it was a fender or something. And he said, yeah, let me get back to you. I just figured he was busy, right? Well, John gets in his car and drives to Bovington and then sends me like 100 photographs of the vehicle. And it's like, and at the time we don't know each other. And then to finish the story off, that model is in a glass case at my house here. That shows you the kind of person that John is. He's just incredibly, incredibly generous. So,
okay, anyway. Now I'm going to exploit that. So John, you said you have hundreds of photos of old buildings in your phone. Send them over.
I will
do. Photos of old buildings for me are like drugs. Like I can look at them and sort of just fantasize. Like, yeah, I probably won't ever get to building those in miniature, but I can at least fantasize of how I would approach that. How would I do that? Yeah. And so, okay. So my second question, which was sort of inspired by what you said, like you said, editing the magazine 5 days a week, building models in the evening, attending model shows. I sort of found myself in this really bad state last year when I was completely burnt out, and I considered going to a model show just to meet a couple of friends, but just the idea of going there was putting me in a really bad mood. Like if I actually went there, I would probably be a really nasty person to talk to, because I was just so, I had enough of all the model related stuff. So I was wondering if you ever found yourself in a similar spot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was when you'd get like really annoying questions, when you're trying your hardest to produce a magazine with the articles you've been sent, and, you can only work with the tools you've been given. And, it was that never being able to please all the people all the time. I think people, especially with the advent of like email and things, they're all too quick to write in and complain. And you very, very rarely got anybody saying, thank you, I really like this issue of the magazine. So you just assumed that all you were doing was the worst job, you could, because, you never, even our publishers used to say, look, just remember, it's a silent majority that are happy with it, and they tend to not tell you they're happy, but they'll let you know if they're not. And then when you look at it and you think, actually, it's only a few people that are complaining all the time. And, and if you did actually meet them in public, and as soon as you saw them, you could go, yeah, I can totally understand why you're that type of person. But I think for you now, if you were to say attend something like SMC, where, you've taken a lot of the pressure off of yourself. I know you've still got a full workload with this, but that extra pressure of not doing this every week, I think you'd get such a buzz from going there and just talking to everybody. And, because the hobby is quite solitary, I know you can have a lot of electronic communication with people, but to just sit in the bar, talk models over a beer, and then all the other stories and the other, humorous anecdotes come out. And I think it would be really good for you, actually, so that's me trying to say, get yourself along to one of the big shows. And, I think
nudge.
Yeah, definitely.
John beat you to it, Scott.
Yes, he did. He did. Well done, Spud. I think, Martin, I think we've talked about before, you're not that far from Moshan, right? I mean, if you were
90 minutes, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's actually one. I mean, I'd love to go to SMC. I haven't been. I am going to go to Telford next year. But the Moshan show's really intriguing that it's put on by a town, and I'd really like to attend that one. John, have you been to that one before?
I haven't. No. It's logistically really the ones in sort of Holland and Belgium are about as far as we can attend. Just really I've never being comfortable about taking models on an airplane and going through airport security with them, all sort of looking and going, oh, bless him, he's building toy tanks, you know. So I'd quite happily go in a car or a van and, you know, be able to drive myself. But I think most of them is like, I think it's like 1,200 miles or some outrageous distance from where I am in the UK. So, but to you guys, that's probably just a trip around the corner.
Oh yeah,
that's crossing all of Europe, you know.
Yeah. I live here in Utah, and we're sort of in the middle of the West, and so it's really nothing for me to drive to Denver, where John lives, is 8 hours one way in a car. San Diego is 11 hours, LA is 11 hours, Phoenix is 10 hours, Seattle's 13 hours. You just jump in the car, and I would rather drive than go through security. It's really, really stressful handing a model to a TSA agent, and nothing against them. They're doing a job, and it's important what they're doing, but it's really, really stressful to do that. I'd much rather just put it in my car and off you go, take off at 3:00 in the morning and get to John's house by noon, and then let the fun commence. Right. Grant, any other questions that you wanted to kind of bounce off of these fine gentlemen?
What do you think has been the biggest change for you with being, I don't want to say more popular, but more in the face of more people? So John, you have Four Corners, which is great. And Martin, you have your channel. What has been the change in your modeling or your life that most people don't know about with these things happening?
I think for me, it was leaving the modeling publishing world behind, and for it to become a hobby again, and absolutely rekindling my enthusiasm. Yeah, that's been the biggest thing for me. It's been able to slow down. I know it's a bit different for Martin, but been able to slow down and build at my own pace, and just put the model aside, shut the door to my workroom, and go back in there when the mood takes me.
Right.
And that's been a real game changer for me. It's stopped it being a chore. And now I'm at the point where I'm at work and all I'm thinking about is getting home and getting on with some modeling, which is just how it's always should have been for me. So yeah, it's definitely the big thing for me.
That's a great answer. Martin, how about yourself?
And what was the question?
So it wasn't a very good question, trust me. So I was just wondering how, you being on a YouTube and having the success you've had, how has that changed you? How has it changed your modeling? How has it changed your everyday life, I guess?
Well, the way I view modeling is that I'd say I don't strive for perfection as much as I used to. And it's the same with other people. If they are asking for advice or something, or, constructive criticism, I'm more happy when I see people finishing models than starting 10 shelf queens a year, and never finishing anything because they set their standard too high and they just get overwhelmed and it becomes boring. So I kind of value finishing models more than building perfect models. And how it changed my life, well, a lot of YouTubers would tell you that it's not the best influence on them. It sort of leads you spiral somewhere where then you realize it's not a really good place, but you don't realize it at the moment. And you become obsessed maybe about numbers, which I never was, but I was more about productivity and, cranking them up as fast as possible. And instead of taking a week off, I would rather work extra hard to produce 2 videos a week. So then I can work with a more leisure pace the next week. So which wasn't cool at all. But what really changed me this year, well, okay, first was that change in upload schedule.
Right.
But then, I don't know, we can draw parallels. Maybe one thing affected the other, but I found a girlfriend when we're still together, and sort of being in a relationship kind of changes my perspective about everything, because one practical example, when I was working on that creek vignette with the Valentine turret in the water, it was Friday afternoon, and I was trying to lay down the initial composition of the thing, and it just wasn't working out, and I was getting frustrated, and I became angry. And by the time my time was up, I was pissed, because we were going to attend some kind of event, and so I had maybe 2 hours to get that composition right. So I just left my studio. We went there. I was grumpy. Then I sort of calmed down. I started enjoying people around me, and I realized this is the real world. These are real people around me. Life isn't just about modeling and getting the perfect composition. And then when we returned back, she went to my studio with me. She helped me, and suddenly the composition was quite okay. So yeah, it's good. And I sometimes think this to myself about people who take modeling too seriously, and I think, like, man, you should probably get one more hobby, because you're too serious about this.
Yeah.
So, it's supposed to be fun, right? I mean,
yeah. And even when it's a job, it still should be fun.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, congratulations, both of you guys. I mean, it sounds like you guys you're on the right path again, and that's the key thing with this hobby. It's like Scott said, it's all about fun. We try in the podcast as hard as we can to make sure that that's the number one key. Scott pushes that on us every day, and I text Scott and say, sometimes I'm having a bad day too, and he helps me, and I help him, and so that's the good thing about the whole group of people that we got working for us. I really do appreciate you guys with those stories. I know they're not easy, but I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, it's great answer. And Martin, really appreciate, that glimpse, personal glimpse. I think it really helps a lot of modelers. We talk to people on the podcast and that struggle with, different things, and modeling can be a really good tool to help people, but it can also, like both of you have said, kind of add to the stress if you're not careful, if you're not managing it, if you're investing too much in, say, contest wins, or you're just putting pressure on yourself, it really can take the fun out of it. Just want to start to wrap up. And first of all, a personal note from me. I want to, first of all, obviously thank you for your time and coming on and talking. I hope you've had as good a time as I have. I always enjoy talking to you guys immensely. But I also want to thank you for all the time that you spend. Spud, you don't have to post photos of your work as you're going along. Martin, you don't necessarily have to do what you do. And I appreciate the fact that the community is open, that I get to learn from you guys as well as other people, and the collaboration of the hobby. I mean, I'm just going to say it means as much to me personally to get to know you as people as your work means to me, and your work means an awful lot to me. So I really, really thank you for that. And I appreciate the great conversation and the perspective. I know our listeners are going to really, really like it. But anyway, just thank you is really what I wanted to say.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I have to thank you as well. That was very nice of you.
Well, I appreciate it. Any other last words? I mean, let's start with where people can see your work in case they don't know already. But Spud, where can people see your work as you're presenting it?
Mine is just really on Facebook, and it's the John Spud Murphy's Model Bench. So yeah, I try and put as many regular updates as possible on whatever I'm working on. So yeah, that's a place to see my work. And obviously the Sherman will be in two parts of AFE Modeler in upcoming issues. So I'm just in the process of writing that up at the moment.
Nice. That'll be good to look forward to that. And then Martin, where can people find your work, my friend?
Well, YouTube at Nightshift, but also Patreon, where I post photos, for example. And recently, actually, in magazines again, at least a few, because when I started making videos, publishers were still approaching me. I said, listen, man, I have nothing of value to offer you anymore. Why would someone pay for an article when they can see it for free on YouTube? But it seems like some publishers stopped caring about that, and they're fine if I just send them photos of the finished piece and write a few sentences about it. So yeah, Dioramac this year with a bunch of my dioramas. AK is releasing my Carl Morders at some point. Yeah, so probably that.
Awesome. Yeah,
That is great.
that whole Nightshift video channel. So I'm sure 99% of the people listening are familiar. But anyway, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Kept you a couple of hours. Really, again, just appreciate your time. It's been a fun conversation, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. It was a great time.
Thanks, guys. All right, guys. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. And me and Scott had a great time.
Yeah, thanks for that, Grant. It was definitely a great interview, and extremely thankful for Spud and Martin's time. Unfortunately, I couldn't make that, but listening to it was almost as good as being there, and can't wait to see them again in person or online, especially Martin's latest diorama with the wheel. Oh my gosh, the guy's a stud. Absolutely fantastic. So let's go into our second topic, and kind of pairs well with the discussion that Spud and Martin talked about, and certainly their work of late in exploring the space and practicing and getting better and, expanding your technique. So the heart of this question, the heart of the discussion topic for that matter, is practice makes perfect. I think all of us practice in a unique way, whether it's with a paint mule or lack thereof, like me, but I'd love to go around and learn how each of us practice. How do we decide, how are we going to execute a new technique? What are we going to do to either perfect it on the model or off? And just kind of walk through that. I'm assuming that all of us are going to be a little bit unique, and I'd encourage our listeners as well to show how they practice, whether it's, taking pictures of paint mules or projects they experimented something new on. And with that, for me, practice comes down to on the model. I don't have a paint mule. Usually if I'm going to experiment with a technique, I do research, whether it's watching a video or reading books, thinking about it, and then just executing. And certainly there are a lot of mistakes on the way, but a lot of times you can erase those mistakes or mold those mistakes into something great. Bob Ross, we're going to turn this into a happy accident. I think that's a common theme that we've talked about before. So for practicing on my end, practicing makes perfect through just building more models. I have found that I'd rather paint a model, try something new on it, and just do it, as opposed to try a paint mule and then do it. I prefer, it's almost like a sport for that matter. You go out, you play a round of golf, you get better. Now, granted, going to the driving range and putting green are important, and you can certainly do that maybe off to the side while you're building. But I find, actually working on a model, at least for me, is incredibly valuable from a learning standpoint and from a practice standpoint. I can see that with the facades I recently built and how to leverage, working with acrylics. For the SDKF 253 for the turkey shoot, it was all around timing and understanding and practicing. Okay, how long do I have to wait for certain things? And a lot of times you don't have to wait that long at all. And the same was with the battleship turret here, where I practiced rust techniques where I hadn't really pushed rust tones that much on a model. And that was a great canvas to practice on. And then also going back to timing, I took the TJ approach where I blasted on a coat of matte varnish from VMS. And I remember I was on Zoom with Zach Grizzle, and I was like, hey man, how long do you wait for this stuff to dry before you go on? And he's like, about 20 seconds, if not sooner. He's like, as soon as I put down the airbrush, I go on. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. And sure enough, worked fantastic. I threw a coat of VMS flat on it and went after it right away. And I think, practicing those things and taking a risk, also, I think part of practicing, especially on a model, is that risk aspect. But you learn a lot and you learn it quickly, and you can apply it the next time. And you just keep going and going and going and going and going. And I think there's a saying out there, 10,000 hours to get to something to master it. I'm certainly not even close to that, but hopefully one day I do achieve it. But that's how I practice on a paint mule. That doesn't exist, I should say. I practice on the model in which I'm building right away. So I'll pause there. I'm going to go around the room. On my screen, it shows Scott next. So I'm going to popcorn over to him.
Thanks, John. I think that building on what you're saying, I think there's an important point here. A mule is definitely, I think, something that can be used in certain circumstances. I know, other builders talk online about, they wanted to try a certain technique, but not using a mule and actually working on the model. And, a lot of the guys on this chat are really good at just kind of being fearless and moving forward. If you make a mistake, part of getting good at a technique is figuring out how to unscrew up your mistake, right? And so I think there's value in just build a model, finish a model. We've been talking about our facades that, I've made no secret. Painting acrylics with a paintbrush is outside of my comfort zone. So you just got to do it. I had wanted to do that technique on the distressed wood for a long time, and I just had never done it. And so, just do it, just do the Nike thing and grab it and see if it works. And if it doesn't, try something else. So I like that. Not using a mule, I think, has just as many benefits as using a mule in terms of practice. And I think just do it. I can't really say more than that.
100%. All right. We're going to continue going around the horn to Douglas.
Well, for me, practice sometimes does involve a mule. If I'm trying something that especially if it's something that I haven't seen done before, like if it's just trying to modify maybe somebody else's technique. I tried multiple layers of hairspray chipping. I first did hairspray chipping on something without a mule, and then I tried what happens if I do hairspray chipping and I do a layer, I chip it, and then I do another layer and chip that one with a different color and see what happens, and if it's worth continuing with that. Or I certainly didn't want to put that much hairspray on a model, so I played around with that. In the end, it does come down to just build, just keep building, just keep trying, take other people's advice, watch YouTube, see what people are doing, and then try to do it. Try to do it their way. And if you see a way that you think it might be a little better for you, then try a different way. Modify those techniques and just keep going. That's how I try to work. Doesn't always benefit me, but I've actually discovered quite a few things that work well for me in doing that.
Doug, that's a great point. When we were on the group builds over Thanksgiving, Rick Lawler was working on his new project. And I think twice during the weekend, he tried something new that he'd never done before, and then ended up repainting the entire model. And so my point is what's the worst that can happen? If you try something and it doesn't work, just prime it, spray it, try again.
Yep. What about Grant?
I don't use a mule. I take that back. I have used a mule for a few things in the past, but never painting. I used it for texturing, figuring out how to texture something a little bit better. But I don't use a mule. I like to do like everybody else, mostly everybody else here seems, is just, look at a pattern or looking at a process and then trying it and then, learning from that process and then just moving on. Gary Baker is a friend of ours that is a figure painter, and he sat down with me one time and said, this is what you got to do. And you just have to attack it, learn from that one, and then move on to the next one. So that's kind of what I do. I try to do as much learning before I start a new process, books, YouTube videos, talking to people, everything like that. So I kind of throw it at the wind, I guess, in better words, and just do it. We're going to owe Nike a lot of money after this video, but it's the best thing to do is just attack it, just do it, and then learn. You can fix it, and then if you don't want to fix it, you just keep it like it is. That's great, but just do it. Just attack it. And I'm going to go over to Jensen.
Practice, nah. More like on the job training. Just do it. Like you said, just do it on the model. I've always the only time I'll have a paint mule of sorts, and it's not a paint mule because I don't have anything specific on hand for that. It's just if I have a model that's like, nah, I'll throw some paint on that. Is if I've bought a brand new paint that I don't know how it behaves, so I'll just throw it on something to test the paint. Again, not practicing. Or if I buy a new tool, like a new scriber, just want to try it on something to see how it behaves, I'll get a bit of plastic art or just stuff like that. So actual modeling techniques, I don't practice them. I just learn them as I'm doing them, because I think that's the best way. Because I found in the past, I used to have a paint mule and I do different techniques on it. I'm like, okay, cool. I've tested this in like a controlled practice scenario. Now I'm trying it on the real thing. It's like, this isn't the same.
Right.
Because it was in a controlled environment. I know this is I'm treating it like it's like a nuclear test. But yeah, I was doing it on a flat piece of wing and I was doing streaking and rust effects. It's like, okay, but I'm going to put these effects on a tank. And a wing and a tank aren't the same thing. So no, don't have paint mules or practice mules or anything like that. Yeah, just kind of echoing what others have said. I do everything as I'm doing it on the model, and if it doesn't go right, I'll erase it and start again until I do get it right, or just try and get it better on the next model. That's how I practice. Just try and do each next model better than the last. And really, it's that simple. I can't really. I don't want to say it's a waste of time to have practice mules because I understand the value and why they would be good for other people. But for me, it's just if I'm putting this energy to practice these techniques and finishes on a scrap, I should be putting that energy into the actual model itself. And I'll throw it over to TJ.
So this might come as a bit of a surprise from the guy that claims he doesn't plan anything. I do have a paint mule. I have a couple paint mules actually, and I use them often. I don't use them all the time. But if I want to try something new, or if I need to test something that I want to try not necessarily new, I will get one of my paint mules out. The caveat to that is it's mainly for when I do something like machining Krieger, because I'll get an idea in my head of a camo scheme. And since you use quote unquote unconventional colors to paint a lot of the camos, I will paint on a test mule to just see how that combination works before I commit to doing the whole thing. It's not like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to paint this olive drab. I know how to do that. Or, I know how to paint 4BO or even do like a traditional camouflage scheme because I know what colors to use and how to do it. But to me, for me, it's just more of figuring out what will complement each, itself well. Now, I don't always do it. Sometimes I will just gamble and just be like, yeah, I'll look at the jars, like, yeah, these jars look okay. That's really probably the closest thing I come to like actual practice. And so if I'm doing like a very fine camouflage scheme or like a I guess more pattern, yeah, I'll practice a little bit of that first just to, especially if I haven't painted in a while. And it's been like a week or two since I used the airbrush, which, as I'm sure a lot of people know, and I'm sure everyone here does too. You will, I work in like waves kind of, right? Or I'll build a whole bunch and then I'll be like, I feel like painting, and I'll spend the weekend just painting all the stuff that I've built. And it may be a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even 3 weeks since I've really like sat down to paint something. You get rusty, even with the muscle memory that I'm sure we all have from years of building. Like, yeah, you got to ease into it a little bit. So yeah, I'll practice on the bottom of a tank, because no one's ever going to pick it up and look at the bottom. Or I'll just get one of the paint mules out. Yeah. And then if I do pigments, which I don't normally do, that's the part of the other reason why I don't use a lot of mules, because I'm not really a pigments guy, and I've never been comfortable with using them. So those I'll test out like on a paint mule. I have a M3 Lee that I've done a bunch of pigment work on, just to see how it looks. Or I'll just grab some other random crap that I have laying. I have a lot of like leftover pieces and spare pieces from stuff that I'll just mess around with. But yeah, that's kind of funny. I don't plan anything really, but I do practice probably more than anyone else here.
I was thinking about, some of you probably won't remember this, but TJ, I know you will. I was thinking about that famous interview with Allen Iverson, where a reporter was making a big deal about the fact that Iverson notoriously didn't like to practice, and he's a perennial all-star, one of the best players in the league. And, he just looked at the reporter and said, practice? I mean, we're talking about practice here, and I think it's kind of the same thing. I don't want to imply that there's any arrogance with any of us, but I think
I think what you said is clear. I'm the Allen Iverson of scale modeling. That's okay.
I think kind of where I was leaning is you are the Allen Iverson, and that the results are the results. I mean, obviously Iverson would practice at least some of the time, but I think his point and all of our points maybe are just that, the results are the results, There's a lot of value in just grabbing something and not being afraid of trying it And if you fail to whatever degree we're talking about, and Jensen, I'm going to agree with kind of your take on this, where
I also agree that Jensen fails a lot. That's a good point, Scott.
where you're so hard on yourself, and at the end of the day, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? Paint over it, try it again, prime it,
I love you, buddy.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in a while. I got to give you a hard time. I've got it's all pent in or pent up. I got to get it all out.
Fair.
But yeah, like to what you're saying, Scott, like, yeah, I don't, and maybe some people do. I don't know, but I don't set it aside what I would consider practice time for what I do. I don't know. It's not like guitar, or like when I used to play my bass, I would sit down and like practice playing. Like I don't know. I don't necessarily know if I treat every model as like practice, but yeah, it's like you're practicing as you're doing it, I guess. I guess it's a little bit different than like playing an instrument, because I don't have to like practice my show, or like, we would practice for like a show we had coming up. Obviously we would practice, our set list and make sure we were all, tight and everything was good. Obviously that's a little different than what we do, but yeah, I don't really sit down. I do kind of treat everything as practice and just take what I've already learned and try to apply it to what I'm working on. And if it works, then it works. If it doesn't, like my Churchill, I feel like a lot of that didn't work, then okay, you just chalk it up as a loss and move on to the next one. I mean, it's just plastic. Who gives a shit?
I mean, doing a gig is a kind of practice too, right? I mean, you're talking about, practicing your bass and, your picking and your finger placement and all the things that are required to play an instrument at a high level. But playing a gig is practice too.
I need to correct you that I have never played an instrument at a high level, Scott. I just want that to be very clear. I was not a good bass player. I wasn't then. I'm definitely not now, because I don't play anymore. So I just want that. I wanted all that out on the table.
But if you got paid, you were a professional, right?
I never got paid. The closest I ever got, I think, was a case of soda.
That counts.
Doesn't work like that in the hardcore scene, Scott.
I'm expecting maybe too much, but yeah, I mean, playing a gig. I mean, I went to a show that Styx did here in Salt Lake, where they were going to do a residency in Vegas, and they played a 3.5 hour show. And they said right at the start, Hey guys, this is kind of a tune-up gig. Hope you enjoy it. And there were a couple mistakes. They had some fun, and it was good. And, those guys, obviously, whether you like them or not, that's a pretty high level thing. And I think it's the same with us. I mean, part of our practice is making a piece, and every piece, it's like this idea that I think a lot of us have. We've talked about this before, where I've got this Tamiya Uber kit, or I have this kit, a Bandai Fine Perfect Grade Millennium Falcon, and I'm not going to do it until I'm good enough. It's sort of this idea of rehearsal versus doing it. Well, just do it. Pull it out and do it. I mean, otherwise you're literally never going to do it. This idea of practice, you're going to get better by just doing it. I don't know. That's not very eloquent, but I think we just need to get over ourselves. I mean, Jensen is a way better modeler than he gives himself credit for. And just like he said, I said it perfectly. If you don't do a blend good enough, then paint over it and do it again.
Yeah. All it costs is a little bit more time, but that's why we do this hobby, because it fills our time and we enjoy it.
I mean, there's a couple of it. I mean, Jensen, when you were doing that ambulance, there's a couple times you almost trashed it. And I think, is it safe to say it's kind of one of your it's one of my favorite pieces of yours?
Oh, yeah. It's top shelf in the cabinet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, John, when you were working on that Border Models T-34 with the add-on armor, there were a couple of times during the construction and painting, you were, I think, ready to throw it against the wall. And, we've all been frustrated with it, but yet look at when we stick with it and we just do it, look at how they turn out. I think it's just important to get over ourselves, to give ourselves a break, and to just look at every project, maybe not as a destination, but a journey. Just the way we're going to get better is by learning how to get around the obstacles we place in front of ourselves.
I agree.
Yeah, for sure. So listeners, share us how you practice, whether it's through Paint Mule, sheets of styrene, anything. Feel free to chime in, share a picture on the Plastic Posse Facebook group. We'd love to have a chat and continue the conversation online. So thanks so much. I'm going to kick it over to Jensen to talk about our friends in the sphere of modeling podcasts and social media.
Thanks, John. It's time for a reminder that the Plastic Posse is just one of several great scale modeling podcasts. You can head over to modelpodcasts.com and you will find links to many other great podcasts, such as Small Subjects, Plastic Model Mojo, Just Making Conversation, the Model Geeks podcast, the Model Insanity podcast, On the Bench, Sprue Cutters Union, the Scale Model podcast, and many, many more. We also recommend several scale modeling related blogs and vlogs, such as Stephen Lee's Sprue Pie with Frets, Chris Wallace's Model Airplane Maker, A Scale Canadian TV with Mr. Jim Bates, and David Brian Bridges' DC Scale Model Studio blog. It's time to head to TJ for some merch news.
If you want to rep the posse, check out our awesome merch at our Triple P Spring page. You can find coffee mugs, t-shirts, jumpers, and even some of our world-famous Triple P lounge trousers. You can order all of your stylish Plastic Posse merch at the web at plasticpossepodcast.creatorspring.com or at loungetrousers.com.
Thanks for riding along with us for episode 83 of the Plastic Posse. Your support and our great sponsors and patrons help bring a Triple P to you every 2 weeks. Stay tuned for more great content, including the great interview with Clayton Ockerby from Australia. Posse will take a brief break over the holidays. Our next podcast will include more details. Got a gripe? A suggestion? You can send your feedback to the Plastic Posse podcast at gmail.com. If you haven't yet joined the Plastic Posse page on Facebook, it is time. See you in 2 weeks, and yee-haw!
If you would like to support the Triple P and become a Plastic Posse Outrider, well, it's super easy. Go on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast, and you can set up a recurring donation there. These contributions will really help us offset the cost of bringing you the Triple P. There's 3 different tiers of support, and they start at just $1 a month. There's some great benefits, too. You can get early access to podcasts, premium access to the hosts, the chance to appear on a podcast, and exclusive Triple P content.
Let's recognize our amazing deputy marshals. These guys step up and help the posse do what we do, and we sincerely thank them for their support. First, our 2 newest deputy marshals are Michael Geyer and John Hale. Thanks, guys. And our fantastic crew of experienced marshals who will be showing Michael and John around the ranch: Casey Gray, Mike Norris, Stephen Rodwell, Brad Ralston, Rick Cooper, Tim Gidcombe, Dan Newman, Robert Blocker, Tyler Moore, Derek Post, Craig Flynn, Brian Kreiner, Scale Modelcraft, Ken Childress, Nick Butta, Drew Gardner, Scott Hall, Frank Perrone, the voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Callis, Ethan Eidenmill, Bruce the Model Noob, Steve Baker, Eric Daglish, Joe Porche, Patrick Brown, Steve Schaefer, Jay Kidd, Brandon Gentry, Robert Klein, Mark Ewing, Ted Kawahara, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Workalla, John Everett, Josh Buck, Thomas Bannock, Mark Bradley, Zach Pease, Joel Munson, Eric Brubaker, Jeremy Moore, DB Scale Model Studio, Matt Johnston, Jeremy Elliott, Mike Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Nofel, and JC Osborne.
Let's also recognize our excellent posse foremen. These foremen are outriders who give the deputy marshals a hand. Keith, James, William, Tim, Jeff, Eddie, Ross, George, Gary, Warhoff Models, Drew, Ross, Eric, Len, Cliff, Eric, Mike, Papa Steve, Red Beach One Studios, MD Models, JV, Damien, Kieran, Cody, Tim, Nuke Man Mike, Greg, JAK, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul, What's the Deal with iBones Models, Mr. Grizz, Jackson, Mac Armor, Chris, Lee, and Jamie.
And of course, our Posse Outriders. Please consider posting a review of the Triple P on your podcast platform. Each 5-star review helps other modelers find the Plastic Posse.